The House Finance Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Stewart,
Here.
Davila, Sweeney, Abrams.
Mark, how you
Baker.
doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you? They're going to go through roll
Calendar,
call now, which is
Jen,
standard
Blackburn.
procedure.
Here.
You want to explain to
Hughes,
folks what
Hughes,
we're
Toops,
expecting today?
Isaacson.
Well, so this is a House Finance Committee hearing on the budget.
Shelton, Johnson.
And I think it's, I know you've been doing this, but I think it's a great thing to make these available to people. You can watch it directly on the Ohio channel. We have a biennial budget in Ohio. This is the hearings around it. All the pork, all the crap, all the legislative changes that otherwise don't get, they don't want to have in public hearings and so forth. They jam it into the budget. Even though by our Constitution, we're supposed to have single issue legislation in Ohio, our courts look the other way.
We have
That is Brian Stewart. He's the head of the House Finance Commission. He's a made man in the Rhino class of the Republican House GOP caucus.
The minutes are approved and are part of the record.
This particular hearing
Apologies for
is
the
where
slight
I
delay.
believe
It was,
citizens are allowed to talk.
For a good reason, but we are now
These
gonna
are mostly
call up,
oriented towards
House Bill
lobbyists
96
and
for
state
its third
agencies.
hearing. We've got about 72 folks on the agenda to testify
I was telling
today.
people the other day that
So
it
we
was
will
all
be
the
sticking
supplicants
with
coming
4 minutes per
to
testimony. If you
their
believe that
benefactor
perhaps you
to
can,
beg for
make
money.
your points in less than that, that is certainly appreciated.
I don't
but
know if
we
you
will,
watched the other day's
get to as
hearings,
many
but
folks as we can.
pretty
We're not
incredible
going to have
the
any
amount of money
breaks
these
today.
people ask for and the way they
Members,
do
take
it
your
with
leave and get
such,
your food and sustenance as you need it.
nonchalance.
But we are going to continue
Right.
on through from now until 5 o'clock, where we will stop regardless of where we are in the agenda. So, members, I understand we've got amendment deadline
I just want to
tomorrow,
make a
things
comment of
happening.
how
Take
obnoxious
your
this
leave
all
as
is.
you need it, but please,
So
as much as
lobbyists
possible,
live in
we would
Columbus,
like
so they
members
can.
to
That's
make every
easy for
effort
them to
be
get
here as
access to
much
these
of
guys.
today as
Citizens live in
possible.
places like I do,
With that
Cincinnati. I
all
know
being
you're in the
said,
Columbus
our
area, so it's
first
shorter
witness
for
is
you.
going to be
So in
David
order for
Painter
me
from
to
the County
present at
Commissioners
this, we said
Association
he
of
had
Ohio.
72 people signed up. This is the
Welcome,
Citizen Day.
sir.
In order to
you may
sign
begin.
up, first off, they hide how to sign up. I believe you get to talk for 5 minutes. So I would have to drive 2 hours up to Columbus, wait around probably for a couple, 3 hours till the 45 of the 72 people go before me, get my 5 minutes, and then drive back 2 hours. It is completely obnoxious. They could easily have you think Elon Musk would figure out how to do this so citizens could testify remotely?
Yeah,
I think
probably
so, but
within
not
about
Brian
5
Stewart.
minutes.
What did you say, Mark?
I said he'd probably be able to do it within about 5 minutes.
This is a dog and
We
pony show.
appreciate Governor DeWine's proposed investments in these.
Oh, there's
key
my
areas and
commissioner,
look
David
forward to
Painter.
Working with the General Assembly to strengthen our county-state
Mr.
partnership.
Thinskin.
Indigent defense has been a longstanding concern for counties. Commissioners are required to expend county general fund revenue dollars for a constitutionally mandated service.
So
through
he's
a system
representing the
that
County
leaves
Commissioners
commissioners with little
Association of
control.
Ohio, of which he's
In Claremont
president.
County alone, we spend $940,000 annually for indigent defense from our general fund. That being said, the DeWine administration
But he's
and
not
the
a
General
regular
Assembly
citizen.
have increased funding to this system over the last several years. We believe that the budget presents an opportunity to continue to
You
support
did an
that
interesting video
financial
when you
investment
testified in
indigent
front of
defense.
them, in public
One of the main
testimony
cost
earlier
drivers
this
for
week. People should
indigent
go to your
defense is
channel
counties is a lack of
or your
attorneys.
If you go to
especially in rural areas.
hickswatchdog.com,
We're pleased to see the current
if you just type
version
that
of
in, or
House
you
Bill
go to my
96
Facebook, Hicks
contains
Watchdog,
language
or
for a
to
new
my
pilot
Twitter.
program.
I'm trying to use X more.
That new pilot hub
Or to
would allow
YouTube,
the
Hicks
Ohio
Watchdog. You
Public
can watch
Defender
Mr. Painter
to
in
directly
countless
administer
videos being a
indigent
complete
defense
idiot.
systems in Allen, Hardin, and Putnam counties. CCAO is excited for this pilot program. Fortunately, the governor's budget doesn't include additional funding for county reimbursement. At the level of funding that is estimated, the reimbursement will be 70 to 75% over the biennium. CCAO is asking for additional funding for $40 million in fiscal year 26 and $53 million in 27. That would be through adoption of amendment number HC 1087. The additional funding would bring the projected reimbursement to 90%. Next Gen 911. The 911 system makes numerous improvements to the state's 911 Next Gen. Life-saving technology and will benefit the citizens of Ohio. As today, 8 counties are currently piloting that system. In the last budget, you took the steps to increase The universal access from 25 cents to 40 cents per month. The fee charges were expected to generate $100 million. However, the fee is currently bringing in around $50 million a year. The revenue shortfalls threatens the statewide implementation of Next Generation 911. CCAO asks you to consider another brave
By the
decision
way, had I
to
gone
increase
there to
the budget
present,
to
I wouldn't be
$1 per
given the
month
premium
to
spot to
ensure
go
that the
first so
counties
I
have
could
the
leave.
funding needed to be able to be
The
successful.
people who are the made
That
men,
would
they
be
get
per
that
amendment
privilege, like
HC
Mr. Painter.
0401.
You would have been at like
County jails.
455.
I would have been like
Enjoyed
73,
a
or
strong
they would have lost my
partnership for
card. I
funding
would have
for-
been
for
after
jail
5 o'clock. He
construction
said we're
since
quitting at
18.
5 o'clock.
State funding, in
would
addition to
add you on
county
the schedule
dollars,
for
have allowed many
503.
counties to build or significantly renovate. Present day, many of these same facilities are coming up on their expected lifespan. CCAO
I know there are
supports
probably
the
people
current
watching who
allocation
think that
of
we're
adult
kind of
use marijuana
exaggerating
for
how
tax review for county jails in House Bill
ridiculous and how
96.
contrived
The creation of a
all of
long-term
this
funding
is.
partnership with the
But
state
we're not.
will be an important issue. Childcare. Counties are fostering self-sufficient health
But nothing
families
about
through
what he's going to
programs
say or
provided
anything
by
we're
our
going to
Job
say
and
is
Family
about
Services.
increasing
As such,
efficiency or
counties
eliminating waste,
administer
fraud,
the
or
state's
abuse.
publicly funded
So he was
childcare
just
system
talking
as
about
such,
911
are uniquely
systems.
positioned to
I'm betting,
recognize both
I'm going to
current
keep saying
challenges
Elon Musk just
and
for the
the-
amusement of it.
and the,
I bet you there's
many
ways you could
families
make
that
911
need
better,
childcare
more
and the positive
responsive,
impact
and
that
more
it can have on a
effective and
family's
much
future.
cheaper using things like
CCAO
AI
supports this
technologies
proposal to increase the
within it.
eligibility
But we don't
to
do that. We don't
160% of the
consolidate. We
poverty
don't
level
think
in House Bill
government is one of the
96.
most
Chairman
inefficient
Stewart, Vice President Chair DeVoe,
things, and they
Ranking
should be
Member
looking
Sweeney,
for
and members
people
of
like
the Ohio
Elon Musk
Finance
that will
Committee.
come in and
The budget
add
proposed by you
efficiency
through
and help
Governor
them root
DeWine
out
is
waste,
strong
fraud, and abuse.
for local
Well,
county
the
government.
administrative
We have the
state,
opportunity to make
the
it an even stronger
bureaucracy
budget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
does not
Questions from the
incent
committee.
people
Representative
to come
Ritter.
forward with ideas like
Mr.
that.
Painter,
And
good morning.
in
Thanks for
fact,
being here.
what
Good
I
to see you
found
again.
when I was
Good
a
morning, Mr.
supplier,
I think you
working
said
to
the
supply
fee currently
things to
stands at 40
supply
cents.
services,
That's correct.
IT services.
Can you
to
tell
the
us
state.
how the
They didn't want to
proposed
hear
$1
about new
fee compares to
advancements.
the
They wanted
states
to tell
around Ohio?
you what they were going to do and just have you
Well, what I
provide it.
can tell you is I can tell you that the shortfall right now is between $100 million and $50 million. We believe that that $1 increase will make up that difference. Now, to be totally honest with that, we propose $1, but we know that you will take the time to take a look at that in the finance to actually come up with the actual number of cents that it would be required to do that.
Follow up. Representative Romer.
I will follow up on that one. Thank you. Thanks for coming in, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Can you talk to us about what caused a 100% miss on revenue, from 100 to 50 million from the projections for the 40-cent charge?
I can't specifically tell you where that actually happened. I do know that there is an audit that has been available not too long ago that said that the 40 cents would be sufficient.
It shouldn't be
for
rocket
counties, but
science
we
if
do
it's a
not
user
believe
fee
that
and it
that
collected
would
half.
happen.
That means people are not using whatever it is. Like maybe if it was on landline phones, people got rid of their landline phones, and so it doesn't generate the fees.
Representative Troy.
Sorry.
Because I think he said like 50 cents a month or something like
Representative
that user fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, President Painter. You're now sending a job that I once held too as president CCO. So
This guy was
I
caught on a
appreciate
hot
the fact,
plate
and
saying some nasty
I've
things
always
about
tried to
Brian
say to
Steele.
understand those of us who've served in county government that a lot of the things we promulgate have to be delivered on the front line by our county governments. We certainly need to help them. So I certainly support the increase in the 911 fee. I'm surprised too that missed on the estimate that bad, because if anything, there's more cell phones out there, so there should be absolutely more revenue. So certainly supportive of that. On the indigent defense, we were as low at one point of 24% reimbursement from the state. You're now up to 70%. Is there anything being done in the association to control the fact that some counties use assigned counsel, some have public defender offices, which are more, I think, budgetarily manageable? Is there any discussion taking place on maybe trying to get the most efficient system in place in every one of our counties to address this constitutional mandate of having to provide the indigent defense?
Rep. Troy, I believe there is. One of the things that is presented here was the pilot program that's currently being undertaken to provide just exactly those kinds of assessments and costs.
Follow up?
One thing about what they're talking about now is nobody questions is innovation anything.
Thank you, Chairman.
So the question is, what's the trend line in indigent defense? Is it
And that's
costing
what's
more
usually
or is it
around
costing
Second High
less?
Association.
And why do we have indigent defense? Because we have poor people that can't afford legal fees. So what is Mr. Painter's solution and what are the commissioner's solutions
Proceed.
to reduce the
Mr. Chairman.
requirement
Good
that there
morning
need to
to
be
you,
indigent
Vice
defense
Chair
within their counties
Davila, and
because you
members
have
of
the
House
citizens
Finance
have enough
Committee.
money to
Thank you
pay
the
for their defense when they
opportunity
need
to
it.
provide testimony
Nobody
on
asks those kind of
96.
questions
My name is
because
Julie
whether they're
Breskin. Like the
Republicans or
chairman said, and I
Democrats,
have
they
the
just want to
honor
keep
of serving as the
getting more
president
milk in
and
the tit,
CEO
if you know
of
what
the
I'm saying,
Ohio
Mark. Just,
Association of Community
and if
Centers.
all of us
I
became
sincerely
dependent serfs
appreciate
on
your time
indigent
this
defense,
morning.
then it's
As
great
the
because now
largest
if we're
primary
fighting
care
government,
network
government's
in
the
the
one who
state,
provides us with legal
Ohio's
defense. How do you think
sixth
that works
federally
out? If
qualified
you're a
health centers
J6er, how do you
and
think
three
your government
lookalikes,
provided
more
legal defense
commonly
works?
referred to as community
Commissioner
health centers,
Painter has
provide
no
care to nearly
solution
1
for
million
why there
Ohioans
is,
across
I'll go,
550
this will cause
locations.
me to go back
We
and
have
in
a physical
Claremont County, I'd
presence
encourage
in
everybody to do this.
76 of
Go
Ohio's
find out what
88
the trend
counties,
line is
although our
in your
data
indigent
clearly
defense.
shows we
How
serve
much is your county
Ohioans from
spending
all
on indigent
88.
defense? Frankly, there
Community
should be a
health centers are
scorecard published
nonprofit healthcare
across the
providers with
state
patient
by
majority
county
boards
of
that
per
meet the
capita
specific
indigent
comprehensive
defense for
primary
each
care
county so you
needs
can
of
see
the
what's going
communities
on.
they serve. For nearly 60 years, health centers have provided integrated whole person care.
There's another
often
lobbyist
providing
asking for
medical,
something.
dental, behavioral health, pharmacy, vision, and other needed supplemental services, all under one roof and regardless of one's insurance status. I've submitted my full testimony for your review, but for the sake of time, I will just concentrate on the 340B provisions in House Bill 96. While House Bill 96 does add commendable policies, we do urge removal of certain
I'm
provisions.
digging that guy's
that
mullet-like
would
thing in the first
significantly
row.
restrict healthcare access for Ohio's most vulnerable populations.
I wonder
pertaining
what
to
he's
the 340B
testifying
drug
on.
Pricing program.
Well, he's got a pin
House
on,
Bill
so that means
96 has
that's the
introduced
universal
proposes
symbol
changes
of a
that will
of
disrupt the
somebody
ability
in
of
the system. They
community
have a
health
pin.
centers to
See the
provide
guy with the
affordable
beard's
and
got a
medically
pin. You got to have your pin.
necessary medications,
All right, let's see if
while
this
also
woman has a pin
maintaining
for
their
her
current
association.
service lines. This includes all 340B
Do you
provisions
have,
that
Mark, do you
prohibit the
have
use of contract pharmacies in the
grassroots
Ohio
freedom
Medicaid
initiative pins
program
that people can
for
wear
I
on their
don't, but I
lapels?
think if I'm going to have to go and testify again, Chris, I'll have
Let
to
me be
get
clear,
some.
these provisions
What you
threaten the
should
progress
do is
Ohio
get a
has made
massively
to
big pin,
strengthen access
like
to
make it like a
healthcare at
brooch
the right
that's on there,
time, at the
and
right
then maybe throw in
location,
some
which is
random
also
foreign
the
countries'
most
flags on there.
cost-effective setting. What this budget
Or one
doesn't
of those
recognize is that
touchdown,
community health centers are a key partner
chains
for
they wear in the
Medicaid
NFL,
as
right?
it seeks innovative solutions to improve health while lowering costs.
I'm not sure if this woman has a pin though.
Community health
She's got her
centers
hairs
provide
blocking where
comprehensive
she would have a
primary
pin.
preventative care at a lower cost than any other primary care provider, saving Medicaid on average $1,400 per adult patient per year.
The guy in the front
Furthermore,
row to the right
the
with a beard, he must have
2024
forgot his
landmark
pin.
report from the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, shows that for every dollar invested in community health centers, $2 is saved in the Medicaid and Medicare spending, a 200% return on investment.
See, this is government. By spending more money, we have a return on investment. This is the same logic of, I don't know if you've seen what I've been saying, Mark, about, these congressmen that as soon as Elon Musk saves money in Doge, want to spend the money on something else.
Right.
We have got to quit spending money.
Medications and essential services for the state's most underserved
They have an
populations and
insatiable
communities,
thirst
including
for
low-income families, seniors, and
posting
rural
social
communities.
media posts
If
that talk
enacted,
about
these
how much
provisions will also
money
have additional
they've
devastating
returned to
effects,
taxpayers.
including significant financial losses
If you look
for
at all
community
of
health
the
centers.
savings
Savings
caused by spending more government money, you would think we'd be running massive surpluses.
Throughout Ohio, when we should
Yeah, it
be
was like
enacting
Sarah came home the
policies
other
that
day and
strengthen
she
such.
kind of cracked up.
Also
She said to me,
increased strain
Mark,
on
this is
independent
how women
pharmacies,
save
further
money.
limiting
I
healthcare
went and
options
got
for
something that I
Ohioans
didn't really
and adding
need
new
at
pharmacy
TJ
districts
Maxx,
to
but
the
it was
list
on
of those
sale,
that
so I
Ohio is
saved
already
money.
home to. In my
Men do that
professional
too.
opinion, some of the
We
positive House Bill
absolutely
96
do.
They do it with
advancements
other
in
shit than
workforce in
TJ
Ohio's
Maxx.
children, they are being undercut by these 340B provisions.
Just for anybody that
One
doesn't
example you
appreciate
will
our
likely hear more about
dialogue,
from community
you
health
can
centers
watch
that come
the
before
hearing
you in
as
submit
is
written
on the Ohio
testimony
channel.
is that more
But
than
the
half of
government,
Ohio's
state
school-based
government,
health center
instead of, for
locations
example,
are
you know this,
operated
Mark,
by a community
if
health
you want to
center.
stream video,
The
it's pretty
340B
much
program
almost free. in a million different
If you
ways.
want to finish that thought, we can.
So the state could do
Yes,
that, right? They could use
so,
YouTube, Rumble,
let's see here.
all these things, but
Sorry.
instead they have a bureaucracy with PBS.
just
They have
say
this
in
Ohio
conclusion,
channel thing.
Ohio is the heart of it all, and to keep our state healthy, we must maintain strong
and then on
investments
top
in
of that,
primary care and ensure healthcare remains cost-effective and accessible.
There are all of
However,
these
provisions take us backward.
commissions and agencies that
And I look
have
forward to working with all of
quasi-judicial
you, which
bodies that
champions
hold
Ohio
hearings,
healthcare
and some of them are
success.
not live
40B
streamed.
is a critical piece
A
of
lot,
our
but
safety
Board
net
of
council.
Tax Appeals.
And make
That's
no
the one.
mistake, if they're
The
elected as
the
a part
ones
of
that
the
are
bill,
doing the
they
things that
will
have
literally
that are
cripple
where
the
you know, like
largest primary
for
care
Cincinnati,
network
where
in the
people like Jeff Birding and FC Cincinnati would go to get special tax treatment. That's things like the Board of Tax Appeals, and they don't stream those. Those are like top secret hearings.
I've been studying.
Gene Schmidt talking. You love Gene Schmidt, don't you, Mark?
Oh, man, she's one of the
hospitals
best.
And community centers in the state of Ohio. And I am as concerned as you are for two
I want
reasons. One
viewers
is
and
there are
listeners to
certain
know that I was
hospitals in the
being
state
facetious about that.
It makes
She's
the
one of the Blue 22.
bottom
Right.
line.
Fortunately,
a
we couldn't
deficit
take her
bottom
out,
line.
but we'll work
I'm
on it
also
for next
concerned with
She's
cycle.
pro-life, except when her top aide has a
things,
problem, and then it's
correct
okay
me
to
if
pay
I'm wrong.
$10,000 to get something
Is
taken care of.
that
Right.
there's no mechanism.
And I could say
in
that all
place
day, and
for
people
the
be like, "Oh, are you get trouble?"
shortfall
No,
that
because the
you're
truth
going
is always a
to
defense.
receive. Medicaid has not told you how
So-
they're
What's
going
so
to
funny is none of these Republicans, I think people need to understand this,
Mr. Chairman,
none of them are going to have a
Representative
discussion
Schmidt,
about how the
we
government
are
gets
meeting
people
with
off of
Medicaid
dependency.
in the governor's office. We have
You know,
not
how do we
had
get it?
this.
Why? So people have to use community health centers, Medicaid. We should put more in
problem, I
community health
think,
centers because then we don't have to
is
spend as much
that
on
in
Medicaid.
allowing you to
What?
keep
Why
your
are we having so many
340B
people need these
program in
services?
place
And what could
hurts the other
government
side
do
of the
to
package.
make people
Am
free
I
of those
correct on
services?
that?
Because government
Mr. Chairman,
dependency
Representative
should
Schmidt,
be
no, I
seen
don't
as a
believe so.
cancer
So in
for
the
any
language,
conservative.
they,
Government dependency is the root of evil.
legislation
But none of
differentiates
these
between
supposed
hospital 340B
Republicans,
providers and
let's see if we
grantee
ever hear, I don't know how long we're going to
providers.
listen
So
to this,
we are
Mark, but
clearly-
I
or,
don't
I'm
see,
sorry,
let-
we are only
people should
asking for
listen for
changes
any
that will
time
impact the
that any of
grantees,
these
and you can keep
politicians
the
actually talk
hospitals
about
as
any measure to
proposed
get
if
people
that's what
off
you're
of
supposed
government
to do.
dependency.
Representative Baker.
Okay. Can I just ask, can we?
And you'll
move
never
on?
hear anybody
Appreciate
come
it.
up
Thank
to
you.
give testimony saying,
Thank you, Chair.
we had $50 million last year, but through efficiency and automation, we only need $40 million this year.
As far as this isn't going to be a
Right.
change to the state
Right.
budget. This is
Now,
a
you know, in
change to
business,
federal
as a
government
business person, if
that
you
comes
came to
in
your
a difference in
manager or
balance
your
in where that
finance
money's
team
going.
and
Can
said
you
that, you'd
flesh
get
that out a little bit?
awards.
Mr. Chairman,
There
Representative
are no
Baker, thank you
awards
for the
like that
question.
in government,
Right.
The
unfortunately.
340B drug pricing program is
Well,
a
then you
federal
look at something
program.
like,
However,
I'll keep right up.
and it
I'm going to
was,
just be on a crazy Elon Musk
began
streak.
in the early
Goes into
90s
Twitter,
for
fires like
safety
80% of
net
the people.
providers, for true safety net
I
providers,
don't
to make
remember.
sure
Have you
that
noticed
our
other than
patients
being under
can
cyber
access
attack? I don't,
medications,
as an end
and then
user,
it
I didn't
does
notice any
generate
disruption of
savings as
service
the
from
None at
that.
program
all.
intended, and we can use those
None
to
at all.
reinvest. In fact, we're
In
federally
fact, I
required
think
as
the
grantees
availability of
to
the
put
system and
dollars
its
back into our
response
health
time
centers
got
to
better.
expand access to other lines of service, whether inside or
And
outside. of
AI,
the
AI
facilities.
scares me for the future
The
Terminator
dollars
movies that we're
go
creating.
100% back
But
to
wouldn't
the
you think that
community.
right
So,
now there should
again,
be
through
unbelievable
medications or
government savings as a
services.
result of AI?
What the budget proposes
You know,
is
for
to
things
say
like
that community health
911, for
centers
things
no
like
longer
getting
can
all their
use
documents
340B,
online automatically.
and the
I mean,
budgetary
there's so many
impact
things, but
there
none of these people
is we
think that
don't
way. And if people don't realize it, you
duplicate
probably realize it,
discount to
Mark,
the
because you
drug
come from a
manufacturer.
business and
If you
professional
use
background.
340B, which
Those
is a
people in
we get
politics
to
could
buy it
never
at a
survive in an
discount.
actual legit business
And
world.
the drug
The
manufacturer has
business
to
worlds
give
that they a lot of
rebate to
times
the
are
state
in
of Ohio. It's called
are
duplicate
when they've been in
discount, and
politics
it's
for a
illegal.
long time,
So
are kind of the crony
the
political
Department of Medicaid
business
and the
world
governor have
of
proposed
government
take
stuff.
it away from
Well, I will
the
tell you,
grantees
while
and the
AI,
hospitals, but
they
have
may
other
not be implementing
mechanisms in the
AI in
budget. So
government.
for grantees for community health centers,
I
they
have found it to
away
be
our ability to use
fabulous
340B,
for taking
and then the state can
legislation,
claim a rebate. However, there is a
summarizing it and
state
looking
federal match
for
on those drugs. So some of it will stay in
the
Ohio, and some of
loopholes,
it will
the
go to defense.
exploits,
Versus when
where
we
it
use
could be
340B,
corrupted or where they're
it's
lying
entirely
to
going
us
to our
about what
patients
it
and our
does. We had an
underrepresented
example of that earlier this week,
Follow up.
and it was AI that saved me hours and hours of time.
I understand the devastating effects on community health centers. If this
By the way, I
passes,
think a little
can you talk
earlier
little
you
bit about
were
rural
trying to have have a live stream of the Ohio Election Commission, which was one of these administrative bodies that's supposed to protect us from corrupt campaign finance. Like, but it would appear it tries to enable it for certain peoples, because then we just have the
Mr.
largest
Chairman,
campaign
Representative Berger,
finance
I wish I could give you a
corruption
clear
event
answer
in
on that.
the
I
country
only
with Larry Householder.
represent FQHCs.
But you and I found we
I
were going to jump on
understand
that,
there are
and
other
then
mechanisms in the
we
budget
found
that
that the
make-
meeting, although it was still
certainly if
online,
there's
had been
not other
canceled without
provisions in
it
budget,
being updated. That's another
hospitals,
typical government
particularly rural hospitals,
disrespect for the
access
people thing.
hospitals,
The guy
would
actually,
be
the sidekick
devastated
of the
as well.
executive
But as I
director is a very nice
understand it,
guy,
there's other
but they're very
provisions in the
over,
budget
you
that
know,
will,
he doesn't, it's just him.
negate that
And so I'm not
language,
dissing
I don't
him,
know
but
for sure.
you know,
I
some
apologize.
citizens could have driven to go see the Ohio Election
Right.
Commission meeting, and at 10 o'clock it was still online that was happening when it had been canceled.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our next witness will be Emily Gemar.
Happy birthday, Mr. Vice Chairman.
And I think, Chris, that comes from what I call the upside down pyramid of,
And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize.
of
This is
government.
rough stuff.
Right.
These guys work for us.
Okay.
Yet
Floor's yours.
Good morning.
when
Chair
you
Stewart,
are with
Vice
them
Chair
and you
Davila,
talk to them,
and members
Yeah.
of the
they
House
act as
Finance
like
Committee,
you
thank
work
for
for
giving me
them.
the opportunity
Right.
to speak today. I represent the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence, Ohio's statewide coalition dedicated to promoting comprehensive responses for survivors and advancing.
I'm all against sexual violence. Are you all against
I will
sexual
be
violence?
providing a slightly abridged
I
version
am.
of my testimony today for time.
But
Over
I,
the
I
past
love when
decade, the
people are
General
like, you know, our
Assembly, the Attorney
statewide
General, and
alliance or
Governor
this or
have
that,
all
and it's
the
something you never even
importance
heard of.
providing Ohioans with access to essential rape crisis services. I want to thank you for your continued support and advocacy for funding the programs that serve as a critical lifeline for survivors. House Bill 96 is a further step in strengthening these services, ensuring our
Now,
communities
if I
receive the help
recall
they need,
correctly,
to become safer.
Chris, our budget
The
for like
Rape
the
Crisis
last
Center's line
cycle
item
was
has
somewhere
played a pivotal
between
role in
85
expanding
billion and
services
90
across
billion
Ohio,
a
and we
year.
ask for your continued
I don't
support.
know.
To
I
make
probably
sure
do,
we're
and
able at the amount
The
it's,
governor is
governor's
asking
proposed
for
budget.
105
This line
billion
item
a
is
year now.
GRF 05501 and is under the Attorney General's budget. The line item was created in 2014 to address.
now, I don't
the
know the
need
bill
for
she's talking
sexual
about. She said
services
House
in
Bill
Ohio.
96, but just so
The
everybody
current
knows,
line
what they
item
do
only
in the
42
budget
counties
is they
get
take
access
all the
to rape crisis
legislation that's
programs.
out there that has not gone
Today,
through the proper
36
hearing
programs
process,
extend their
and they
reach
just
to
jam it in the
78
budget.
counties, helping thousands of
On
survivors
page
globally.
That's what they did with Gene,
3700.
My agency, OEESP,
Gene
steps
Schmidt
in to
did that
provide
with baby
stopgap services
boxes,
in
which I don't know.
10
You
counties.
and I've never talked
We
about it.
ensure
I'm
that
against
survivors
them.
receive the
You know, you can
necessary
be the other
support,
way. I don't
including
care.
survivor
But
advocacy, housing and
they
legal
had
assistance.
OD.
Our
Department of
centers
Health
serve
had some
people all
regulations
over
on
the
baby
state
boxes
in
that made a
rural,
lot of
suburban,
sense.
and
To me,
urban
made a lot of
communities.
sense, having to do with safety
These centers
inspections,
are
stuff like
very
this.
much on the front
And they
lines,
didn't really
respond to
enforce them
sexual
that well.
violence
But
24/7,
she effectively got
365.
jammed into the budget bill to
They
take away any
answer
regulation at
crisis
all
calls
and prevent the
24/7.
actually prevent the
They
Department of
dispatch to
Health from
hospitals
regulating
and
baby
support,
boxes.
sexual assault
And
To
baby
the
boxes,
benefit
for
of
those who don't
an
know,
Indiana company where the families get
rape
rich off
kits.
these things.
They
yeah,
provide safe
baby
shelter for
boxes, for
survivors
those who are
housing
unaware,
is
Chris,
unsafe.
are
They provide counseling and
So
support
baby
groups for sexual
boxes
assault
is
survivors,
that you
and they
put
guide
in the
and
alley
protect
behind your
families
fire
through the criminal
station
legal system.
a box where a
Last year, our
woman can
hotline
put
served
her
between
unwanted baby, I call them
4,000
baby
victims
dumpsters,
statewide.
and throw the baby into a
These
dumpster,
centers
the
have
baby
annual
dumpster behind the
organizations in
firehouse.
Ohio that specialize in
They
the
they
needs
move
of
they
sexual
get
violence
people and
survivors.
politicians like the photo
Ohio
ops. This is my opinion. You can have a different opinion. Mark, you might have a different opinion. You and I've never talked about this. But politicians love it because they get a photo op of they're doing great things for women and for pro-life and all that kind of stuff by having a baby box. But what they actually do, and the woman that runs the company actually does, is encourage, let's imagine young women that have unplanned pregnancy, to not tell anybody. She actually encourages them to not have a medical delivery. Don't go to a hospital because they'll get your information. You want to remain anonymous, so you should have your baby in your car or in your dorm room and then put it in a dumpster. So
face increased risks of long-term physical, emotional, and psychological harm on top of the economic.
the reality, I know you're having there's some issues with the stream, but at least but the reality is, what happens with the reality is that traditional safe haven where a woman or woman and man, whoever goes, hands off a baby to a fireman or to a policeman, like 30-40% of the time, the person handing the baby off needs medical services, especially if they've had a non-medical delivery. So they help them with medical services. And then a lot of the time, a significant percent of the time, the woman then elects not to hand off the baby because just that human contact with a fireman,
right?
you know, they start to realize people love you and can get you help. And that's what happens is people get into a mental funk. They have an unplanned pregnancy, maybe a young girl. They get in a mental funk and they think they're going to give up their baby. When they make that human contact, contact
For your consideration.
the
I'm
the
happy to
the
answer
love that a
questions.
fireman gives back, and we can help you. We can get you some medical
Thank you
help.
for your
Get this
testimony. Questions from
changes
committee?
it, and then not to go on, but about
Seeing
30%
none,
of
thank you.
women who hand off babies in traditional safe
The
haven
next
come back to
witness
reclaim
will
them
be Tanya Fullwider.
after the
Mental
fact.
Health
They
And
get
that's a
30
good
days to
thing.
reclaim them
That's
because
a
what
good thing.
happens? Which they? It
That's
is.
a good thing.
Good morning,
We
thank
should,
you.
we should want.
Chair
So
Stewart,
imagine what happens,
Vice Chair
Mark, and I
DeVilla,
know I'm going on
and
about this, but
members
what
of
happens
the House
is,
Finance Committee.
um,
Thank you for the
the
opportunity to provide
here's
testimony on
another
House Bill
mental
number
health
6.
wants some more money,
My
I'm
name
sure.
is Tanya
But
Fullwider, and I
there's,
serve as
but
the
what
Executive
happens
Director of
is, let's
Mental Health
pretend,
Ohio.
I think you actually do
Metro
have a
Metro
daughter,
Ohio
right?
was
You know,
founded in
so,
1956
so
as an
imagine you had a
affiliate of
daughter
Mental
and you
Health
found out
Network,
after the
nation's
fact that
leading
your daughter had
community-based
had a
nonprofit
baby and put
dedicated
it in
to
a baby
addressing
dumpster
the
box.
needs of
Okay.
those living with mental
You
illness
would,
and
you
promote
would,
overall mental health
don't
for
you
all
think you'd
Americans.
probably be
We
like,
work in close collaboration
we
with
love
many
you, even if you are, you know,
programs,
you're not, we want,
including
you know,
the
we're not going to
Department
let
of
our
Mental Health and
granddaughter or
Addiction Services,
grandson go
and
into
as
a
members of
baby
Ohio's
box and
Behavioral
be
Health
lost
Collaborative, a
forever, you
coalition
know,
for healthy communities.
because you're the parent,
We
you have
support
maturity
the
that a
proposed budget
younger
by the
woman, if I don't know,
department,
your daughter's
as we
older, I think,
believe it
but
aligns with
when
our
they're
organization's
younger, that they might
priorities
not
and the
have at that
state's
time.
broader mental health goals.
What the baby box
Today, we aim to
advocates
highlight
want
3
is they
critical
want
areas that
there to be
require
no
focused
connection
investment.
because if you
Perinatal or
put your
maternal
baby in a
mental
baby
health,
box, it
the
puts them in a
behavioral health
legal state
workforce,
where you
and
have no
certified
rights
peer recovery
whatsoever.
supporters. We
Even, you
believe
know, if you do
prioritizing these
traditional, if
areas
you
is
go to a
key to
crisis
building a
pregnancy
healthier
center,
Ohio, where
you're
everyone
going to
has
get,
access to the
they're
necessary
going to,
behavioral health
I think they're
resources.
mostly all very
Depression
reputable.
and other
When
mental
you go to a
health
crisis
conditions are the
pregnancy
most
center, what they're going to
common
want you to do is do an
complications of
open
pregnancy and
adoption.
childbirth.
They're going to try to help you to
Since
be able to be a good
2008,
mom or do
mental
an
health
open
conditions,
adoption.
including
Because
suicide
another
and
thing
overdose,
people don't
have
realize,
been the
and there's
leading
somebody
cause
that
of
put a
death
baby in
for
a
pregnant
Monica
and new mothers in Ohio.
Chelsea baby
These
box that
deaths
committed
are
suicide
preventable.
recently.
The
Is that people
consequences of
who
untreated
give up
perinatal mental
babies
health
and people who
challenges
are
extend
adopted have a
far
much
beyond the
higher rate of
immediate well-being
suicide.
mothers,
And history has
impacting
shown
the
that
long-term
open
health,
adoption, where
stability, and
there's
development of
still,
children.
you know who your
By
birth parents
investing in
were when you get a
comprehensive
certain
mental health
age or
support
immediately,
during this critical
that
period,
works much
we
better
not
and
only
significantly
safeguard the
reduces the
emotional and physical
rates of
well-being of
suicide
mothers, but
involved with
also create
adoption.
healthier, more resilient families.
That's more than you ever wanted to know
laying the
about baby
foundation for
boxes.
future
But that was
generations.
I know
something
you
that got
do.
jammed into
Addressing
the
these
the
challenges
last
requires a
biennial budget bill by
comprehensive
Gene
and
Schmidt.
integrated
No
approach, and the
hearings, no
Ohio Perinatal
discussion,
Mental
no
Health Task
nothing.
Force
And no matter how you
exemplifies this
feel about the issue,
The
it should
advanced
have been
policies
part
and
of a hearing
practices that
where people can
comprehensively
talk,
support pregnant
not a
and parenting
political
individuals
stunt by Gene
facing
Schmidt
mental health and
because she wants to
substance
get a
use
photo
challenges.
op at a baby
It's
box.
also essential that pregnant and new mothers, we know that they
The-
face unique barriers in accessing mental health care that leave them especially vulnerable.
The other thing
during
that bothers
this
me
critical
about
period in their
all this
lives.
legislation being jammed into
Peer-led
the budget
programs have
is we're
demonstrated
supposed to have
remarkable
like
success
single issue
in connecting
legislation in
mothers
Correct.
with
Ohio.
life-saving mental health and
And
substance
the
use care.
pretzel
This leads me to
logic
our
that you've
next
got to
priority,
use to
certified
determine
peer
how
recovery supporters.
something
Peers are
is
uniquely
in a bill
qualified
about
to
the budget
provide an important
that has
factor
nothing
in
to
an
do with the
individual's path
budget
to recovery.
may have
They
no
help people
dollars,
feel
but it's
seen,
more of a
heard, and
legal
understood
kind of
without
thing,
judgment.
like
All protective factors.
Well, that
having
baby box thing is a
individuals
perfect
engaged in
example
treatment.
because it involved nothing
Last, I
of,
want to discuss our
you know, it
behavioral
wasn't a
health
budget issue
workforce.
whatsoever. It
MHA
wasn't,
It was
Ohio
you know, a
rules
lot
and
of times they
regulations.
could
behavioral
weasel
health
that, you know,
agencies
changing
across
some of these
Ohio
policy things
identify
that
and
these
address
people, the mental
workforce
health or
challenges
the
for
sexual
almost a
violence, they
decade.
can argue that
Through
is
this
part of
work,
the
we've come to
budget. The
deeply
policy
understand
becomes
the
part of
most
the budget because
significant
it involves
issues
funding
facing
of
the
these
behavioral
places.
health workforce.
But there is a ton of
Many
stuff
of
that gets
which are
jammed in the
systemic.
budget that has
Since
absolutely nothing to do with
2017,
any
we've
funding
surveyed and
whatsoever.
conducted focus groups with over 16,000 behavioral health workforces representing nearly 26,000 Ohio workers. We recognize that Ohio's behavioral health workforce is under significant stress, with frontline staff facing unmanageable workloads and burnout.
You know, they should have
Organizations are dealing
part of
with
this
high
whole
levels of
process should
turnover.
be things
For
like
these reasons, we
indigent legal
respectfully
fees,
urge the General
things
Assembly
like
to prioritize prenatal mental
fostering,
health,
things like
strengthen the
sexual
behavioral
violence,
health
things like mental
workforce, and
health.
recognize
There
the
should be a
vital
thing of
role
what is
peer
our trend
recovery
line in Ohio? Are
supporters.
we getting
By
more mental
doing
health
so, an
issues,
upcoming
less
state
mental health
budget,
issues? Because
Ohioans will have
this
the
woman,
support and
if these
resources
people
they
were,
need.
if this was a business
Their
thing,
opportunity to
her
testify,
thing should
and I'm
be,
happy to
how
answer
do we reduce mental health issues in Ohio so that I can lose my job?
Seeing none.
Ideally, the sexual violence person, the mental health person,
Next
they would
witness will be
ultimately,
Dr.
their dream
Elizabeth
would be,
McNeil,
there
Ohio
should be that they would be out of a job, right?
Right.
Because
Optometric Association.
Good morning, Chairman Stewart, Vice Chairman Davila, Ranking Member Sweeney, and members of the House Finance Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to
Mullet guy
testify
took
before
off.
you today. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Muckley, and on behalf of the primary eye care doctors that make up the Ohio Optometric Association, I would like to convey our support
Another
for the inclusion
association.
of and funding for the Ohio C Children's Vision Initiative
Of
in
doctors.
House Bill 96. The
So the
OOA
Children's
shares the vision
Vision
of the
Initiative.
governor and the Ohio General
I'm all
Assembly
for
to
Children's
eradicate the
Vision.
unmet
Are you for?
care
Are you
gap
supportive of
for
Children's
school-aged
Vision, Mark?
children who fail school vision
I am.
screenings and who need a comprehensive eye exam to better their
I'm
ability
a
to learn in school.
strong supporter of children's
Children's
vision
issues
and
require
making
special
sure that
attention. An estimated 25%
children have good eye
of
care.
school-aged children have vision problems that may
A lot of
affect their
these
ability
things,
to
what
learn.
taxpayers should be very aware
However,
of.
only
This is a
15% have
huge,
had
a lot of these
comprehensive eye
things, they're good
examination
intention.
by the
Nobody'd
time
be
they
against children's
enter
vision,
kindergarten.
okay?
While school vision
But this is,
screenings are
these are
valuable
Trojan
first
horses. I have
step in
no idea what
identifying
she's talking
potential
about.
issues,
But
it is crucial to
when they
ensure
come to
that
you and
children
talk to you
receive
about putting vision
comprehensive eye
centers in
exams
high
to
schools
accurately
or
diagnose and treat
medical
vision
care
problems,
clinics in high
such
schools,
as
this is the
binocular vision
government
disorders
taking
and
control
perceptual
of your
delays.
parenting responsibilities.
Currently, less than 30%
And people
of children
clap
who
and
fail
act like
school
it's a
vision
good
screenings
thing, and a lot of
receive follow-up
conservatives
care.
idiotically
This low rate
just
is
go along
attributed
with
to
it,
factors such as
thinking, well, yeah,
financial
why wouldn't
hardship,
we want to have
lack of
that?
awareness
And
about
then
eye
you find
care,
out, hey, the
logistical
clinic at the
challenges,
school's
work
what's giving my
schedules,
kid the
and limited
hormone
appointment
injections.
availability in some
It's
Or
areas.
they're
setting,
giving them
Governor
flu
DeWine's Ohio
injections
C
with
proposal
no
aims to significantly
informed
reduce or
consent
eliminate
of
the
the
gap
parent.
between failed vision
right. So
screenings
these
and
things,
access to
Teresa
there's a
comprehensive
reason
Gavarone,
that
vision
the,
care.
the
A goal
school
long
should
shared
be
by
there
the
to
Ohio
teach your kid.
optometrist.
That's what the school
In
should be,
partnership
not
with
to
our
provide all
charitable
these
foundation, the
services.
Ohio
And if
Optometric
you're,
Foundation,
if you have, and there's some
Ohio's
kids in
optometrists have a
horrible
long
home
history of
situations where they
providing
can't go to
thousands
school,
of
that
comprehensive
doesn't
eye exams
necessarily
and
mean we should
glasses
change the
and
schools
other
to be,
necessary
you know,
materials at no
address all
cost
those
to
issues. We need to
communities
address
and
those
schools
issues at the
across
source.
state.
Yeah,
And
schools
then
are
we,
not.
Also worked
Yeah,
with
Go ahead,
schools
Mark,
are
I'm sorry.
not a
Assembly for the
social
past two
services
budgets
portal.
to secure
Right.
targeted funding
But
for
they want them to be,
underserved
and it
areas of
sounds
Ohio
good. And
to
even the
provide
conservative
additional
people that
services
say
for
that, they
students who
clap
fail
and
these
applaud.
screenings
Isn't it
and need
fantastic?
additional eye care
We're
with
having
impressive
going to have a
results.
medical clinic for
The
the kids
investment
at
from
the
the
school.
state, coupled with
Remember,
optometrists'
you
charity
probably know, you
care,
know, I
have
talked a
produced
while on stuff
measurable
like this,
positive
so I enjoy
outcomes
just
for these students
talking.
and their
You're,
families. Through
you know,
comprehensive
what
examination of serious conditions
George
such as
Soros type people
amblyopia
want to
and
do
significant
is
refractive error
get
have been
the
detected.
middle and upper
As a
class
result,
dependent
Ohio
on
has
government
become a
services
national
and feeling
leader in
entitled to
addressing
government
children's vision
services
issues.
also. So
Despite this
recently, you know, a
success,
couple
there
years
is
ago
still
in
more
Ohio
we can
schools, you
do
could get
as a state
lunches
to enhance vision
delivered to
care
your
and
house
provide
during the
children with
summer
the
by
best
FedEx,
opportunity to
and
learn
it didn't matter
succeed
whether you were
throughout the
rich or
state.
poor.
Ohio's
So
doctors of
one of the
optometry
things that's a
strongly support
secret
Ohio
to
C,
the
proposed
liberal
in House
agenda,
Bill
which a lot of
96,
rhinos
recognizing it
are
as a
on
critical
board with,
step forward
is
in
that when you
expanding eye
do
care in
that,
essential
now all of
health.
a sudden
The
upper and
Ohio
middle class
Optometric
people expect
Association
the
and our
free
tribal
lunch to be
partners
delivered
on
to
our
their house.
foundation
And that
are
means there
committed
will
to
never
working
be
alongside
cuts.
the
There
General
will
Assembly
be
and Governor
cuts because now
DeWine
everybody
to
puts their hand
ensure
up.
the successful implementation of this initiative. We were honored
Yeah,
to be
the idea
selected to
is to
serve on the
get
Children's Vision
more and
Strike
more
Force
people
under the
dependent on
direction of the Ohio
government so the
Department of
people
Health
in government
Director
have more
Dr. Bruce
control over the
Vanderhoff,
people who
which
depend
brought
on the
together a
government.
diverse group
Right.
of stakeholders dedicated
And
to children's
that,
vision. This collaboration marked
don't
the
confuse
beginning of
that.
discussions on
When people are
developing a
yelling about
statewide
what they're
Ohio C
entitled
program.
to,
The Children's
they're
Vision
also
Strike
yelling,
Force explored
substitute the word
most
dependent
direct,
upon.
and
I
most
want to be
effective
dependent
ways to bring
upon
vision
school
care
lunches
and
coming to
comprehensive
my
eye
houses by
exams to
FedEx.
local
No,
communities.
we want
The
a
discussions focused on
situation
eliminating
where
the barriers
kids
to access
have
for
parents that
children and
are
their
in
families,
a
including
means,
ensuring that
haven't been
children
sold a
receive
bill of
glasses
goods,
when needed.
where their kids are being
Because
raised
the
by the
Ohio
government
Optometric
because mom and dad
Association
are
and our
trying to
partners with
work
the
two jobs,
Ohio
you
Optometric
know, get at least a
Foundation have
BMW.
extensive experience in the key issues that are at the heart of the Children's Vision Initiative
We had
proposed by
someone
the governor. We encourage you and your colleagues to take
send us a
advantage
chat
of
message,
this
Chris. I want to
expertise
read it to
as
you.
the initiative's details
Laws are written to
defined
be
during the budget
confusing on
deliberation
purpose.
process.
Instead of giving a straight
Optometrists
answer,
enjoy
they point to
dedication
other
children's
laws,
vision and
creating a
improving
loop
the
where you
lives of
never get a
children and
clear
families
response.
through
Why?
exceptional eye
Because
care
it keeps
remains
lawyers,
unwavering.
judges, and
Chairman
politicians
Stewart,
in
Vice
control.
Chairman Davila, Ranking Member
Regular
Sweeney,
people
and
struggle
members
to
of our
understand the
Finance Committee,
system while
thank
those in
you, and
power
I'm happy
use
to answer any
loopholes to their
questions.
advantage.
Thank you, Doctor, for your
What
testimony.
happens?
Questions
Instead
from
of
the
solving problems, laws create endless rules and
committee?
delays.
Glassburn.
Justice takes a back seat to
Thank you, Mr.
technicalities, and those
And
with the
thank you for
best
your
lawyers
testimony and
win.
your involvement in
Not
this
always the
effort.
ones who are right. How do we fix it?
With
Laws should be
the
written in
allocation
plain
of
English,
$40
give
million
direct
for this
answers, and
program, I
focus on
understand there will be
fairness,
some,
not just
private
following
pay
procedures.
that's enlisted in
Right
this,
now,
but
the system's
could you
built
speak
to
to any
serve
more
itself,
detail
not
as
the
to how,
people.
since it
I
appears
can't
from your
disagree with
testimony
any of
you're involved
that.
in getting to that $40 million number,
Well, how do you fix it?
give us idea of a benchmark as to why 40 is the number
I think you
versus
fix it
30 or
by
50 or some other
Reducing the size of
To the
government.
representative through the chair, thank you for that question.
By
Last
hiring
year, of course,
people
we
or
were able
electing
to share,
people
all of our
who are
programming,
true
all of those of
conservatives who
us that are
believe
involved
in
vision care,
limited government.
And we were able to discuss also.
I
private
think that,
pay,
you know,
Medicaid,
I agree with what you
many
just
other
said, but I also
funding
think that can be
mechanisms to
very
try
hard to
to
do. And I
ensure
think
we
that
were
when
making
you're
sure
an
that we were
outsider
judiciously
in, you know,
using
in
all
Ohio,
financing mechanisms
and so
available
forth, that
to help
you,
deliver
you
this
have
care.
to,
Much of it in the past has been
you have
charitable,
to,
and for the last two budgets, this General
this
Assembly
word has a
has,
scary
funded
connotation, but
optometry to help that.
outsiders are
So the Ohio
insurgents
Department of Health
against
created
the
a request
entrenched,
for
corrupt
proposals
system.
with the governor's staff
And so a
to
lot
hit
of
some
times that
those
means you
numbers.
just have to
I
do the
don't
things
have
you
all
can
the
do, like what
details
you're
on
doing
what
right
that
here, Mark.
request
This
or
is a good
proposal
thing to
will be,
do.
but
And
optometry
hopefully
is
that gets
happy
more
to
people
work with the
enabled,
General
gets them
Assembly,
more
the Ohio Department of
energized,
Health,
and then
the
it gets,
governor's office
and then we
to,
start, we look for the
help continue
opportunities to
structure the
exploit
framework,
cracks in the
in
system, to
developing
have an
this.
impact on it, and eventually the house of cards
Yes,
hopefully will
please, Mr. Chair,
fall.
thank you.
My Polish
Is it
friend,
your
did you ever
expectation that,
meet, you probably never met him, my Polish friend Janusz,
Can change,
but
that
he would
this $40
remind
million
people, hey, in
you're
Poland,
recovering
don't
by
worry,
everyone
America,
asking,
as you're
is
going
this,
into your libtard
is there some
communist
one-time
world,
costs involved
don't
with
worry,
this?
it'll be okay. It only
To
took
the
60
representative
years
through
in
the chair,
Poland.
thank you for that question.
Just wait 60 years
As
and it'll be
far
better.
as what we
So we also
anticipate,
tend to
we
want
would love
instant
to see this continue
gratification,
over time.
and we think it's going to be
Obviously, when
solved,
any
and it's,
type
you
of
know, we just look
startups,
for an
we need to
answer,
expand care,
when the
have
reality
operational
is that it's the
expenses,
more
and then you
question
have
asked right now is,
programming.
what are you
Sometimes there's
doing
operational
to put up a
and
defense? Like,
startups,
just for example,
we
what
need to
you're
get
doing right
staffing
here,
and
Mark, you know,
equipment
you
and
do a
things
lot
like
of
that.
stuff to try to
We're
inform
already
people,
having
educate
that from the
people,
past two
and,
funders. We've
you know,
already done
and
that. So
get
ramping
them
that up
aware
to
of
see
this budget
39,000
process,
children
get them aware of
takes a
this,
lot.
get them aware of that.
We will not be the
And
only
then,
program,
but it's
obviously,
not,
working to
you
deliver
know,
this care, but
the worst thing to do is to condemn the people that are the you know, challenge the people that are trying to do that. All right, now it's just we've lost our stream work.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness will be John T. Van from Ashland City Schools.
Good morning,
Welcome,
everyone.
gentlemen.
Hey, welcome. Good to see you. Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, members of the House.
Let's see if this person talks about how we can cut a budget
Online. Thanks for being here. My name is John T.
or
Van,
reduce
and I
spending.
serve
He's
the
got a
Ashland City
pin.
School District as their
Yep,
Board
he's
of
got a pin.
Education President.
And Mullet
Next to me
guy's
to my
back
right
with
is
his
our
pin.
Treasurer, Mr. Kyle Klingler. And our district is very thankful to have.
And I think, is that the second row bearded guy or the first row? Did the guy get his pin?
Leader as a neighbor.
I thought there was a
friend,
bearded guy in the
marketplace
first
leader.
row that was missing.
Really
his
appreciate the
pin.
Ohio
That guy's got a
Broadcasting
pin.
Station for recording so many public testimonies. I kind of binge watched it over the weekend of kind of what to expect, who's going to be in the room. And so thanks for making that happen. About Ashland, about 30.
I'm all for wearing like an American flag pin or something like this, Mark. But these people that wear all these dumb association pins, you know, Painter wears a Claremont County pin. I think that should mean basically tell us dweeb.
Equally from local and
But
state sources.
if you wear
Just
pins,
to
Mark,
give you
it's
numbers.
okay.
One is local, be 55%. 37% is the state, that's you. And then 8% would be federal. Now, I know there's been countless presentations.
Weren't you wearing a
Just being
Ukraine
echo chamber
pin for a long
yes,
time,
through
Mark?
All this again today.
Yeah,
And so
Slava,
I thought I
Ukraine.
would talk more from the heart on more some flavor of my
Yeah, that wasn't me.
testimony to you. And I want to say that I've not done what you've done, and I couldn't do what you do. It's hard enough being on the school board, the hate mail, the craziness that happens, and the good things that happen. So I appreciate you serving our.
By the way,
communities in
part of
state
the,
Ohio.
the political
It's not government,
class is
it's unappreciated.
patting each other
I
on the
love
back
the
about
state,
how hard
and
they
I do
work.
love the state as
As
well,
far
and
as I
thank
can
you.
tell, if
I
they
don't
do
wanna look
sometimes
anywhere
spend
else.
tons of hours,
Maybe
but they're some of the
January,
most
February,
inefficient
maybe
people
somewhere.
on earth.
These are-
And, you know, your background, Mark, and
so
my
I do have some
background
unsolicited
is
encouragement,
you would know
maybe
what
from
real
my
hard
perspective
work
at the
is
table as a
and
school board
having to be
member.
efficient in that time.
You know, it was fantastic news yesterday that Lieutenant Governor Tressel would be taking the lead in developing a workforce playbook to help grow jobs around Ohio.
Workforce playbook.
And you guys
That's what
know
we
this as
need.
leaders, organizations,
A guy
states,
who's never been
boards,
in
and
business.
committees
Yeah.
are never better than their leadership, and
Been in
that's why
sports, but
what
he's never
you're
been in
doing,
business.
what you're doing, it matters. And when leadership
You
is
would get
divided,
like, you know, part of the Reagan-esque
things
type
aren't
thing people get is,
amazing. We want-
it's
I
not all
want-
these bullshit
we want
playbooks and
Ohio
all
to
that
be
kind of
amazing.
crap.
And you're here
It
because
is
you
to
want the
get,
state of Ohio to be so
it is,
amazing that other
you know,
states in our union go, "Hey,
have the
what's
simple
going on
right
with Buckeye
policy
State? I know they
decisions
won on January 20th,
that
but
can help,
what they're doing here matters.
you know,
Let's take a
can
cue from
simple
them."
and right policy
And you know this,
decisions that
the
can
win
create
is
the right
when we make
climate.
the state of Ohio amazing, everything is really, really good. So
We
everything
have
that's
a
represented in
Byzantine
our
tax
Ohio
system
House,
in
from
Ohio
agriculture to technology,
where
innovation, and
the collection
workforce, higher
of
education,
sales
I
tax,
believe
use
brings
tax is a
builds
nightmare
better
because
teammates,
every county is
stronger
different,
cultures, and
everything's
positive
different. It's
leaders.
hard to do
But here's the
business in
thing, when
Ohio
leadership is
because
divided,
of the
progress is hindered,
Byzantine
and
use
outcomes
tax
fall
and
short
sales
of
tax
potential.
system that
We've
varies
heard
by
this
every
before,
county.
especially those
Why
that
don't
are
we
married.
fix that?
Disagreement is inevitable.
That would do more than any Jim
So, however,
Tressel
when
workforce
disagreements are
dumbass
unavoidable,
playbook.
division is always a choice. And I feel like we're in a season, we could meet in the middle, the messy middle, of getting
Are you
things
getting
done,
on
taking
board
care
though
of
with
things in
Tressel
our
running for
state.
governor, Mark?
Because,
Is DeWine's
you know,
last hope to
vision can lead
prevent
to
a real
complexity,
conservative from
complexity
getting into
leads
office?
to inefficiency, and
Yeah.
inefficiency
I mean,
leads
I think you know my
leads to
feeling.
uncertainty.
I'm a
And
Vivek
uncertainty,
fan, and
believe it or not, you
and
know
I don't
this,
want to hear
drives
about
people to
his
prioritize their self-interest and
participation
maybe
on the
corners
vaccine
of the room of
COVID
what's in it for
board
me.
or
And I
his
believe with all the
association with
testimonies that have been
pharma.
represented,
I
think
would I,
everything
if,
about
I would
that.
take a ham
About Ashland real
sandwich that
quick,
wasn't part of the
speaking of
Ohio
funding, Ashland is
Republican
not at
Party
the 20 mil floor,
ecosystem
and with that
and
20%
line of
increase in
secession.
property values,
Right.
our
He
city
will
schools
rock,
will
if he
receive
gets
a 20%
elected, he will
increase in
rock
property
their
tax and House
world
Bill 20
because
only
he
inside
will
the
not
bill.
have played by their
I'll leave with
rules,
this.
just
It
like
was 5
Bernie
years ago
Moreno and
today,
JD
the
Vance
governor
didn't play by
closed
their
our
Right.
schools
rules.
for 3 weeks. You guys remember 2020?
When JD Vance,
Election
when you
year.
go with outsiders, yeah, you could always screw up. I'm trying to think of an outsider that's a screw
And I
up,
think
you
we have
know,
an impact
in
to
office,
help
but most of the
students
time you're
and
going
as
to
city schools
enable the
to actually
potential
make not
of
just defeat
some
our
good
area
things
schools,
happening.
kids,
And I think that
and empty
both you and I are
buildings and
probably
kitchens. So,
extremely positively
thanks for listening.
surprised at what an excellent job
Take some
JD Vance has
questions.
done.
Oh,
Treasurer Kyle
I'm his
Clement,
biggest fan.
my mentor.
It's incredible how well
Thank you
he's
for
doing.
testimony. Questions from the committee. Representative Hoops.
And I hope Moreno's the same way, an outsider that's not, you know, bent over and
have to pay any transportation
to the
costs
political system in
for
Ohio.
private schools?
Vivek would be
How
the
much
same
was
way.
that? Or did you have any fines that you had to pay because you weren't able to fulfill that responsibility?
Okay, that's a great question for Mr. Klingler. I'm going to let him answer.
So Mark, I see your thing on there on GFI Ohio. What does, what's the 30-second thing of what GFI Ohio is doing and what your goals are?
So, Chris, what we're trying to be is the number one communication brand for conservative information in Ohio. And to generate content that educates people on how we're governed and what they can do to advance conservative principles like smaller government.
I wouldn't have
right?
an exact dollar amount. Just
So,
because, like I said, we transport
we have
with our
presence on all of the social
students,
media
because
channels.
our district
We've
is
got
not
these text
overly
alerts,
widespread,
but we also
private
have an
schools that we
email
do
list
service
and all
are
that,
really
and we'll
close
put
to,
some other pyrons on here having to do with those.
transportation on that.
But I would ask everybody that's watching to pick up your cell phone, type in 833-935-4657.
Thank you for
Hold on,
into
Mark. I
the-
got my cell phone right here. I don't get your text alerts, believe it or not. I get your
Type it in.
emails, but I don't get your text alerts.
Yeah, type that number in and type join as the message. You know, we've done this all the time. We do this all the time.
About, and then two.
Hit enter
if
and
we're
tell me
unable
what
to
comes
fully
back.
Implement the phase-ins to adjust.
Slow typing, so I got
Good question.
And I'll probably type the number wrong the
Through the
first time.
chair, Representative
So it's
Robinson. It was actually
833
21 years ago. We released all the new money in Ashland. And instead of
4657.
maybe starting a GoFundMe account, we're considering other options of how to make that happen. And we'd love to have you.
By the way, anybody that uses GoFundMe is
And
not a
I'm interested to see what
conservative.
the federal government's going to do. if
Go
there's
to that.
change.
What's that Dan Bongino like? Alternate economy.
Thank you.
Don't
And
be
if that
Parallel
doesn't
economy.
right.
happen, and
Get, you know.
aside from the GoFundMe account,
GoFundMe.
what trade-offs or choices will you have to make?
Does it matter if the join is capital or small?
Doesn't matter.
Pray about it. We'll meet. We'll decide in Ashland what's going to be best for our students, you know, the end users and families, and probably meet with our. We have a great mayor, Mayor Matt Miller, State Representative Melanie Miller. Maybe a levy. We'll explore options. We thought the first step
It
was to come
says
to
you have been entered in a
Like we should
drawing,
talk about. We should talk
and
to
your
you.
information has
And
been
so here
sent
we
to
are,
TikTok.
we'll
And
figure
no,
that
it
out
says,
when that
thank you
time
for
comes.
joining GFI's
Yeah.
text list.
Thank you.
You can text stop to stop our messages at any time.
Thank you for being here. Somewhat.
Yeah, it was a mini TED Talk.
What's your enrollment like? Is it going up or going down, or we gaining 10%, or we losing 10%, or where is your
Yeah.
census?
So
One of the things about whatever he's talking about is that we don't have any comprehensive view. A lot of these spending, think of how much spending is driven basically by
That's maybe statewide.
people in poor financial condition, whether it's indigent health,
So
this,
we're,
this,
we've
blah, blah,
actually
blah, blah,
have
blah.
some students moving in from other districts.
Politicians would never holistically recognize the
I'd say
core
we're staying
issue
right
is
at
people that are
3,100.
in a
Would you wanna
dependency
give-
state on
Spring, would you give
government,
more of a
and how do we help them not to be in that state and get them off of those rules?
yes, we have
When
a
you look
lot
at it at all
of,
these
decrease
slices of a
in
pie, here's a
enrollment,
school thing, here's a health thing, here's a
and
this thing, here's a
to
that thing.
counteract that
You
and
never look
try
at it
to
holistically, and
properly
can you just
align,
imagine the amount of
we are
waste,
reducing our staff
you know, the
to-
amount
to
of
match our
abuse,
enrollment,
fraud that takes
whether
place
it
in
be
these
on the
things because they're not
certified staff or
connected.
the classified staff.
I don't,
We're constantly looking at those numbers and trying.
Have you heard
to
of St. Vincent?
match up so we
Not
have
St.
appropriately sized classrooms.
DePaul?
And
That's
that
it. What's the
probably
thing that
the biggest,
Catholics do where it's
piece
like old
if,
guys that go to
funding
help
does
poor
go
people?
down.
It's not,
St.
it's a
Vincent
St.
Paul?
Sizes
St. Vincent de Paul, okay?
go up.
So I went to a meeting once, a long time ago, with a couple buddies of mine that wanted to get involved. And there's a bunch of old
Gentlemen, thank you for your
curmudgeons. They're great
testimony.
guys that do
Our
this,
next
okay?
witnesses will be.
But one of the things they do is they
Scott
coordinate
Wiggin
across parishes
Brandon Meyer,
to identify
Court
people that are trying to take advantage of them by going from this church to this
Fellas,
church
good
to
to
this
see you.
church.
Good to see you.
I
Good
wonder
to
if
see
any
you,
of that
Chairman.
happens with these programs.
Good morning, Chairman Stewart and Vice Chair Davila, and members of the House Finance Committee. My name is Scott Wiggum, and I'm Wayne County Clerk of Courts, and I'm here with
Wayne
Brandon
County
Meyer,
Clerk of
the,
Courts. So
Fairfield
Scott Wiggum
County
was
Clerk
in
of
the
Court
House,
and
right?
legislative
Remember when Scott
co-chair
Wiggum was
Yeah,
in the
it
House?
turned out.
This just, and all of a sudden you were a legislature, but now you're clerk of courts. These people cannot get jobs in the private sector, I'm telling you. They're too lazy. These political jobs are not hard jobs.
They're cush. They're cush.
And they
They are
just
definitely
revolve
cush.
chairs. They just revolve chairs. And it's
just
not,
as a-
ultimately,
just
it's
as a
on us,
brief
the voters,
reminder,
for allowing these people to
the
do
clerk
this.
the Clerk of Common Pleas Court receives and processes documents for filings for the general and domestic relation divisions of the Common
Because, of
Pleas
course, the
Court,
people
and this
on the
includes
House
filings
Finance
for
Committee
civil
don't know what a
cases
clerk of
of
courts is.
15,000 or more in
That's what they
dispute,
do.
felony criminal cases, and for cases handled by domestic relations divisions. And in addition, to the responsibilities of the legal division of the Clerk of Court, all clerks have title offices, and many have more than one title office. In Wayne County, I have 2 title offices. And these clerks' titling duties include issuing all vehicle and watercraft titles statewide. Other titling services that some clerks provide to constituents include operating driver's examination stations in partnership with the BMV and issuing watercraft registrations, and that is in addition to watercraft titles. Most title offices also accept passport applications, as do mine as well. And the cost of operating the court side of the clerk's office is supported by filing fees, and the title side of the clerk's office is supported by title and other BMV-related fees if that clerk of court also acts as a deputy registrar. So the as-introduced budget includes a proposed $3 increase in the certificate of title fee. That fee would be collected by the clerk and deposited into the Security Investigations and Policing Fund used by the State Highway Patrol. And this would not be available to the clerk for titling fees expenses. Now, we understand that there may be financial challenges that the Highway Patrol is experiencing, and as a clerk of courts, we are also feeling those constraints caused by inflation. However, we believe that the increase in the title fee should be used to the benefit the entity directly responsible for using or collecting the title fees. The current title fee is dispersed to the clerk of court, has not kept pace with rising costs of operations and financial realities faced by our offices, and are becoming increasingly unsustainable. And so the last time a title fee was increased for
You
the
know, all these
clerks,
government things.
for the title
Could
fee,
you imagine if you could go to a
operations
portal that was
in
your
the
citizen
transportation
portal
budget
for the
in
state of
2009,
Ohio and had all your
that
shit
was
right
House Bill
there?
2 and
Your
House
car
Bill
titles,
20
your this, your that.
Assembly.
That's what a
Now, the fee
business
was
would do.
increased then from
But
$5
everything's
to
like this
$15.
piecemeal,
So currently,
unintegrated
the certificate of title fee
crap
is
storm,
$15,
and none of these
and
people
as
have
you
the
can see,
talent.
you
Would
can
you,
read where
Mark,
the
I know
title
you're,
fee
you
goes
know,
to, but I will say a
IT
lot of
guy,
it
head of
goes
company.
directly to
Would
the
you hire any of these
court's
people to
management
come
of
in and
title fee,
design an
and
IT
those
system
rest
for you?
are all about
No,
title
and
fee
I've actually asked people,
operations. And I'd like to
that's a
turn
great
it over
question. I've actually asked people, okay, you're really, in support of this person. Let me ask you a question. If they had to go out into the private sector and get a job, tell me what talent they have, what skill they have that's valuable to the marketplace, that's valuable to the community.
We have also listed the comparison.
And in many cases, they just can't give an answer because they're facades, they're charlatans.
They couldn't design. If you want to understand how bad it is, probably one of the most important databases you'd have in the state would be the voter rolls, right? The voter rolls. And you would get this, Mark. They don't have any relational database concepts on any of the voter rolls. It's like a flat file. It doesn't have a concept of a household, where there's multiple voters in the household. It's all a flat file. So every time somebody wants to work with it, and if you're in a political thing and you want to say send a mail, you got to go through a whole process to rationalize the data, to try to figure out, because the database is fucked up. The database is not a database. It's like a flat file from COBOL 1972, and they don't want to fix it.
We misheard that, or is that inaccurate?
Certainly. Through the chair to the representative.
It'd be interesting, Mark, to figure out, is there some AI way to analyze the voter registration
Every time you
database?
get a driver's license, license plate, or registration, they're collecting that fee. The
I'm
only
sure
time
there
you
is,
receive
Chris.
That fee is when you buy or sell a vehicle. So, most people keep a vehicle 5-6 years. So, we're only receiving that.
Based on some of the
fee
things I've been doing, I'm sure
anytime
there
someone
is.
buys or sells their car.
Well, let's say that you could get a file. You and I can debug some of this. Let's say you could get like the auto registration database.
The premise was that,
And you could cross-check the addresses for auto registrations to the addresses for voter registrations. How many issues would pop up?
Well, the other thing
That's
is,
the kind of stuff that Elon Musk wants to do, is he wants to cross treasury payments,
through the chair to the representative,
or cross Social Security payments to Medicaid
many of
payments,
these deputy
because it would help you to see where there's
privately
fraud or
managed-
inconsistency.
privately managed
At least it would help you to know where to drill in. It would give you the suspects that you need to go
all that's
investigate.
public knowledge. You can go online.
you could also put in, it's hard to do this now. You have to do it pretty much manually. But you could put in all of the addresses for all of the mailboxes, et cetera, and the UPS stores and all of that, and look at who is registered there. Because
That's a great idea.
That is
And how
illegal.
much they pay themselves.
It's not illegal to be registered at a UPS store if you are homeless. Homeless people, and this is one of the things that should be very clear but isn't. There's this exception for if you're quote unquote homeless, that you could be registered at a church or a UPS store or something. But that should be, instead of just kind of this free for all thing that would allow fraud, there should be some very clear rules about how you be registered at one of these places. And I think now it's a gray area, and politicians like gray areas. To the gentleman's comment, they love gray areas where it's confusing, because maybe I need some voters registered at the UPS store.
That might be a question that would be, but I think that's a big difference between what's
Or just, I found here, by the way, by me, there's a hotel,
that is
and there were I don't know, 20 people registered to vote at the hotel. Now, some of that could be legit,
Representative Troy.
and it turned out that a lot of them, I called the hotel and was asking them. It was an Indian-owned hotel. A lot of the people that had been registered were members of the Indian family that lived on the grounds of the hotel, but many of them had gone back to India and were no longer even in Ohio. But it never got cleaned up. But they were very nice, by the way. I don't think there was any fraud going on at that motel, just a maintenance issue of overtime. They had people come and go that were working there.
But but that example right there is an example of what could be done if more people had access to the information in a more consumable and usable way. You could crowdsource election kind of issues.
Right.
And the good, and in your case, it's not only looking for bad news, it's looking for good news. Okay, we know these people are legit. That's good.
I know since these fees went up, Lake County was doing.
Well, you need to activate that base of, quote unquote activists. But also I tell people, you got to come at it with the mentality. I'm a very fact-based guy. You got to be trust but verify type of thing, because you can't, immediately assume that, there's something up, like it's crooked, and you have to, like me calling the motel to investigate and not coming at them like there's some sort of crooks that are doing fraud on the voter system because they had like
Through the
20,
chair to the
you know,
representative,
but then I
yes,
find out
there
what the
is.
reality is,
I
and
do
they would
believe
be wanting a lot of
sometimes
those
you have a
registrations to
surplus.
get
That
canceled for
surplus
people
is
that no longer
shrinking.
were in the
You
country.
know, my county, I mentioned 76% of just the salary and benefits from 2009 to present. And, you know, we've not had an increase in that 16 years, and there has been less auto vehicle
I think they
sales,
also
so
had people
less
that
auto titles,
maybe had
being
registered there when they
processed
first came
also.
to the
So,
U.S. and
you know,
got where
we're
they could
trying to
vote, but then
operate on the
eventually
same,
moved to their own
amount
house
of
or
money
apartment,
that we were,
you know, and their
receiving
registrations are
back in
still in their one
2009.
location.
But of course, the salary and benefits have increased, and
How
you know,
many
I
people do you
still
think in
feel that
Ohio
the
have
salary and
registrations in
benefits I'm
a
offering are
location
less
other than where they
than
currently
what
live?
I would like to offer,
I think
but
that's
kind
probably a
of
pretty big
what our
number,
county compensation plan is offering,
especially in
because
young
we're
people where
next
they
door to
move to
Columbus,
different
and we're
apartments and they
competing
never close
against
out their old registration.
private companies, and
Yeah,
so forth
there
that can
are
pay more
there
than
are a
what I can
lot
pay in my
based on
office.
the work that the Ohio Election Integrity Network and some of the election
Other questions
integrity
from me?
activists around the state have done. And these are, you know,
Just so I'm
professional
tracking,
IT people that are
position
taking those
is
databases and doing cross
Clerks
references and
Association
things like
supports the
that.
$3 fee increase, but does not want to go to the patrol, wants us to stay with the clerks. Is that simplified?
It's safe to say that Representative Brian
I would
Stewart,
say
stalwart
the
conservative,
$3
would never in a
that's going to
hearing
Ohio
say
Patrol,
we
that
should
would
be
have to be a
working to
policy
reduce the
decision
Ohio budget
that you all would have to make. We're
and
not
provide better
taking
services
a
at less
neutral
cost.
position on
Better
the
services,
$3
less cost, because we live in an era of such technological mastery
Just don't.
that we could legitimately do that.
Better way
And
to say it.
every company in
Well, the
America's
$3
gone through that,
increase
right,
would be what
Mark? You know,
was in the governor's budget proposed
we
to go
you,
exclusively
no
to Iowa
company
Patrol,
does
and then what we're
technology where the
proposing is
technology
aside,
does not
separate and aside from
more than pay for itself. That's the whole
want a
point.
$3
You
increase
use
to go to patrol
technology
and a $3
to
increase for the
reduce
clerk.
your
We're not
costs, not
addressing
to
the Highway
increase
Patrol.
your costs.
Well,
That's
you know,
not the way government
We're
works.
just addressing
you know, you had to do
the
a
increase
return on
that goes
investment
specifically to the
analysis of
clerks, the
any
$5
any, any project you were proposing at the companies you work for.
Understood.
Right.
Thank you.
If I, Mr. Chair, may I add?
And the
So
notion
the
of
Clerk of
being
Courts
asked,
Association is asking for
you know,
a
you're going to do a
$5
project
increase
and you're
that
going to
goes
have to,
directly
and once we do it, we're not going to need as many
Clerk of
people.
Courts for
Every
the-
business has gone through that.
if-
You know,
if the
every
Finance
business, you know, this whole
Committee
thing like
and
with
General Assembly
Elon
decides,
Musk and asking people their 5
to
accomplishments.
take a look at it and to be in
It-
between that.
As a
that's fine.
consultant,
But
I had to
think
do that every,
that what- in my
that was
testimony, we are
I had to track
specifically
every day
saying
what
that,
I was doing
although
and
the
report
General
every
Assembly may
week what
need
I
to
had done all
address
that
needs
week,
for
what my
the,
variances
Highway
were. And then
Patrol,
as a manager, I had to do that for whole
asking that
projects.
it
You
not
could,
come out of the
every
clerk
week you needed to tell,
And
be
the
able to
reason is,
articulate
for
what
me,
exactly we
I'm not
accomplished,
now
where
I'm
we
gonna speak
fell,
on
got
my-
ahead, where we
my
fell
own a
behind.
little bit here. I think in
That's
terms
normal
of
business.
the
Wouldn't you
court
agree,
fee
Mark?
into a general
Normal,
tax
professional,
is my opinion, because now it's
project-ish
not
business.
used
Yeah,
for
it's
actual titling and those the clerk title office.
What would you call it? It's an expected of you
Yeah,
as
it's
an
a
employee.
what's that? De rigueur means it's like just a
Next one is from
normal,
the Abby Sigmund
like
from the
when
Ohio
you're a
Association
consultant doing a
of Teachers.
timesheet every day. You know, at first it's a pain in the ass, but you know the funny part is you mentioned it to me, the Hawthorne effect. You know,
Right.
just doing these things causes you to be more efficient because you know because it makes you think every day, what am I doing today?
And I'm the executive director of
If
the
at the
Ohio
everyday,
Association for Gifted
if
Children.
most people try to do this, and I'm very
OAGC
guilty of this,
promotes and
anybody who's
supports the
listening can do
development
this.
of gifted students in
Go
Ohio
and,
by
and
advocating
at the
on their
end of
behalf.
every day,
There are
write
more
on a
than
piece of paper a breakdown of how you spent your time.
identified gifted students in Ohio.
Every day, write down
The
on a piece
state
of paper at the end of the
Ohio
day,
has
break
a
down how you
gifted
spent your time.
identification
I know if I
mandate,
do
of
it,
which
you
we are
probably do
very
it, Mark. I'm going to find
but
I
we
wasted
have
like
no
half of
gifted
my time.
service mandate,
Exactly.
Which I will continue to
You know,
advocate for.
and so one of the things about
Comparatively,
having a
if you're the
rigorous management
940
system is it
gifted
causes
intervention
people not to waste their time on,
and fewer than
what I call C
1,150
activities. There's A activities,
staff,
important B activities, less
While I
important
will
C
be
activities,
discussing specific
diversions and
changes
waste
to
of
the
time.
operating budget, it is important to note that these ratios of gifted staff to gifted students are deeply unsatisfactory and directly contribute to the daily burnout, struggles, and exhaustion of gifted staff. In the interest of time, I'm going to.
By the way, the other
condense
thing
some
you
of my
never hear a
testimony
government
here.
person, she just said gifted
the
staff.
cost
You
study
ever
was
hear a government
performed
person
in
criticize their
2015
staff?
that shaped
Say, we got a lot of idiots on the staff. You know, never happens in government. Everybody everybody's doing a
outline
great
4 main
job. When I
areas
listen
of
to our
gifted
local
cost
meetings, trustee meetings,
recommendations,
county
which
meetings,
includes
everybody's doing a
identification,
great job. The
professional
services
development,
department, the road department,
gifted
everybody's doing
coordinators, and
fantastic.
gifted instructual
Never
services.
is there a critical
This
word
cost
said
study
about them.
inexplicably
You would never
assumed
find that in a
professional
company.
development
Even a big
funds
Fortune
for
500
general
company,
education
Mark,
teachers
you
could
read
be
the report and
eliminated
there's going to
after
be
4
criticism
years,
of their own
which
company in there,
brings me
where
here
they're
to
not
the-
delivering what they want to deliver.
General education teachers providing gifted
Well, at a
services
minimum, they
need
get an
ongoing
audit report
professional
from their
development
independent
throughout their
auditors that
careers
have
and should be
audit
funded
concerns
as
about the
such.
business, and
Gifted staff
they've
to
got to
student ratios
respond to
are so
those to their
vast
shareholders.
that gifted students must be served by general education teachers.
So
who
just
have the
noodle on
knowledge
this for a
and
second,
understanding
Mark.
of their
What would
unique
happen
needs.
if people,
This is
government
outlined in
employees
the
weren't
gifted
allowed to
rule.
vote?
The removal of these funds in the operating budget is
Could
not
you imagine that?
consistent with Ohio's
No.
requirements for general education teachers providing gifted services. I ask
I
that
think
you all
things
please
would
retain
shift
previous budget
just a
language
little bit.
that provided funding for general education teachers to receive gifted
Washington,
professional
D.C. might vote Republican.
Secondly, I would like to address GIS to student ratios. OAGC would like to see a few changes to the gifted formula, such as
Have you ever
updated
read
salary
Freakonomics?
figures and coordinated
I did.
ADM ratios.
But this woman just said the
However,
ratio of
the major
teachers to
concern
students. I love the
OAGC
part of
has
Freakonomics
regarding
that
the
the
gifted
ratio of
formula
teachers
is
to
the ratio
students is
between
not a good
gifted
determinant
students
of educational
to gifted
outcomes.
intervention specialists in grades
Because
6
a
to 6,
good
which is currently
teacher, a
140
good
to
teacher
1.
with twice the class
This
size
ratio
gets a
stretches
much
gifted
better
intervention specialists to a
outcome
level that degrades
than a
service
good
to gifted
teacher with
students.
half the class size
While
and
there
a
are many
mediocre
ways to
teacher with
serve
the other
gifted
half of the
students,
class.
this
Teacher
ratio goes
quality
well
is the
above
number one
recommended level in
determinant
the gifted
of
operating
outcomes
standards
after
at
it was
8
like
to
third
1.
grade or something. Like
For
up until
students
like
with
third
self-contained or
grade,
cluster groups.
there's a
I
direct
am here
correlation
today to request
between
a lower GIS
students to
to student
teachers in terms
ratio.
of
The
the
approximate
development.
cost
But
would
once
be
you get
around
past
$15
fundamental
million
development things, say
when
through
the
third
formula
grade,
is fully
the
funded.
it's not
A ratio
ratio
of
of teacher to
120
student, it's
to 1
quality of
with cost
teacher.
around
And you're much
7.5.
better off to have your kid in a big
Finally,
class with a
gifted
high
students
quality
are
teacher
frequently
than in a
presumed
small
to
class with a
thrive
poor quality
independent of
teacher.
academic
That's
intervention
Freakonomics
or support.
101 right there.
This
Right.
assumption is both misleading and detrimental to a gifted child's development. Gifted children must
And
be
there are a
provided with
lot of
challenges that align with their exceptional
things that
abilities,
we have been
or they
told
risk
by
social
government
and emotional
rules of
struggles,
thumb,
boredom,
like
and chronic
looking at the
underachievement.
per capita
Ignoring the
spending
unique
for
needs of
students.
this student
This is the
Number
most
one-
asinine measure. Go ahead.
Yeah, the number
I
one
strongly urge this
measure
committee to
of,
adequately fund
or the
services for
number
these
one, the
students while
worst school
considering gifted
district in
funding in
Ohio,
HB
Youngstown,
96,
spends like,
ensuring they
I
receive
don't
the
know,
appropriate resources and
$30,000
opportunities to
a
fulfill
student,
their
where
potential.
Madeira, one of the
Thank you
top
to the
five,
members of this
spends
committee for
just
listening
under
to my
14.
testimony. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, and the thing is, like,
for your
you don't,
testimony.
you
Representative
have all of
Robinson.
these,
Thank you, Vice
anybody
Chair.
who's seen a school levy,
Happy
part of
birthday
it
from
always
me,
is,
too.
we're not spending as much as some other
thanks, Abby,
district
for
in our
being
area.
here.
We
I
need to
appreciated
spend
the
that much. We're not,
conversation
Yeah,
we
we
just
do.
need
I
to spend
wondered if
more.
you could
You
expand a
never
little
are going to
bit
find a
more
school
about
person
why
stand up
the
and say,
professional
we do
development
it
is
cheaper,
so
better,
critical
faster.
for teachers.
And again, with
And
AI,
also just kind
you know
of
what's one of the
explain,
scary things, Mark, is you
what
and I
the
were probably all
difference in
against
that
all of the remote
training
learning
that they
stuff during
receive
COVID and
is
all that
as
nonsense.
compared to,
However,
just
didn't we
general
learn
professional
anything? So like the
development
school
training that they
by where
receive.
I'm in, which is not a terrible
through you, Vice
district,
Chair, to the
but they pretty much
representative,
jettisoned all that
these
remote
gifted
learning stuff.
professional development
And I'm
funds are
against the remote
specific
learning,
in
what
the
they did in
sense that they
COVID, but
help
is there a
general
place for remote
education
learning?
teachers both
Absolutely,
identify
there
and
is a
serve
place.
gifted students.
And,
This is not
you know,
a
why
part
would you
of
just jettison
their
that? You've
training
made all
to
this
become
investment.
teachers.
You would just not
Unfortunately,
use it at
one of the
all.
institutes of
You know,
higher
think about a
education in
company
the
like
state of Ohio
you and I,
gifted.
you know, most companies are doing
This
some
is
sort of
not
remote
taught
learning thing.
in any capacity. And so we
If a
really
kid
rely on these
misses a day
professional
at school,
development
wouldn't it be
funds
great that they
to
could go
ensure
back
that
and
these
watch the
general
teacher
education
lecture?
teachers can both
You know, that you
identify
would
and
you would
serve these students in the
institutionalize that.
classroom.
Wouldn't
And
it be
back to the
great
GIS to
if the
student
if
ratios,
schools of the
when we
future,
had
the lectures were being
225,000
recorded
students in the state of Ohio
automatically,
identify
and then
gifted,
parents could go
and we
watch what was
have
the lecture that my
around
kid got in school today,
1,100
or the
professionals
kids
who
can
can
watch it.
serve
Imagine
that.
when your kid
Those
comes home,
ratios are
you
far
could
too
say,
large for
and the
those
kid's confused about
professionals to
some
serve
math thing
gifted
or can't
students.
do it.
So we
The
really
parent could go
rely on
actually
general
watch the
education
lecture the
teachers
teacher gave
who have the
themselves to
professional
see
development
maybe they,
to serve,
hey son, I'd like to
identify,
watch it, and then
and-
I'll see if
and,
I can help you.
Be with those gifted students.
But
and
they don't
families.
want that because
Thank you
then
for
a lot of
the
times you
chair.
see
Yes, please proceed.
what passes
Thank
for
you.
teachers
Thank you
is not
for
up to snuff.
making that connection to the ratios also. That was another follow-up question that I had. But the last last question that I'll ask you is, can you kind of explain what the impact is to the entire classroom if our general education teachers don't have that specialized training?
Through the vice chair to the representative, it is often thought that a gifted student without service.
When
is
you were
going
a
to
kid,
do
Mark,
fine.
did they talk
And that's
about
just simply
quote
not
unquote
the
gifted
case.
students?
Social behavioral issues often come into play, and in the general
I don't think
education
so, Chris.
classroom, if
I
they're
think
not
this
being
is an
served, if they're
invented
not
term
being
of our
challenged,
world
then
and
they could
modern
be a
world.
behavior
A
issue, or
gifted
they could
student.
just
It was
not
either
be
you were an
challenging
A student maybe. He's an
We
A
want-
student,
I listened to
or
the
he's on a
students
college
yesterday.
prep
We
track.
want
You know,
every
he's on a
student in the
college prep
state to
track.
fulfill their God-given potential.
But
And
when you tell
without
some
challenging
kid,
these
I'll tell you
students,
what.
we will fail them all.
Are there gifted kids?
Representative.
You know, are there proteges? Yes, there are. But I'm telling you, going around telling kids that they're gifted kids is not going to help those kids progress. When you're a kid, having adults telling you how gifted you are is how you get Greta Thunberg type kids that think that they have the ability to comment on things in which they have no basis, because everybody tells me I'm gifted. All the adults are telling me how gifted I am. Reality is even gifted kids, when you're coming up, I think the socialization of school is about learning to be humble, learning how to work as a social system, learning basic things, and starting with tiering people. You're gifted, you're dumb, you're this, you've got a disability. Labeling all these kids in these little stratas. I don't feel like when I was a kid, they did this. It all existed, but it wasn't like this adults telling that this kid's gifted, this kid is special needs, this kid is this. Oh, she said special needs right when I.
And so in an ideal world, if I could wave a magic wand, I would have
Were
a
you
gifted
aware
intervention specialist in every
That what?
building, in every
Were you
classroom
aware that
can help serve those
25%
gifted students.
of
Those
kids in
ratios that I'm
Ohio public
discussing,
schools
ideally
are
81
considered
would be
chronic
wonderful in this state, but I do also
absentee
want
cases?
to highlight that 100.
Where's Tom Holman to come in here and get them back their asses?
Right.
And by the way,
even some of our
I'm
urban
super
areas,
against
that
the way
that
education is, but when
GIS
people talk to
sometimes
me,
going to 5,
they'll be
6,
like, "Oh, are
7,
you not with us?"
11
Because
different
here's another
districts to
thing:
help
we
serve
can all be
students.
against
I find
the,
that to be
what
really,
education has become in
tragic,
Ohio.
to
We
be
can
honest.
all be, in our country, really. But on the same token, we also need to be sympathetic that teachers are being asked to deal with issues that they should never have to deal with. And so they're being asked to deal with issues of parents not fulfilling their responsibilities, and that is not fair to the teachers, and it's not fair to the other kids. And ultimately, what would have happened in the olden days if this happened? The school would have said, we're not letting you come to school. You're unprepared, And people think, well, that's cruel. We got to have the school. Even if it costs us $200,000 a year, we need to deal with this troubled kid. I'm not talking about handicapped kids. I'm talking about this troubled kid. Well, maybe what that does is maybe cause a disservice to all the other kids. Are you willing to sacrifice the other kids because you're going overboard on a kid that maybe is a troubled kid, won't come to school, misses half the classes, and then holds everybody else back? But we never think of solutions. This state, we can't even figure out how to fund the education right? We cannot in decades and decades and generations we are so uninnovative as a government, we can't even figure out how to fund education. And I'm sure we haven't talked about this, but I'm betting if I were betting on the Mark Bakita Square, you're for a backpack bill type thing.
Oh, absolutely.
If you gave the parents the money and you let schools become maybe more privatized school, well, if that happened in a big way, there would be more private schools, more, and they would deliver better results. They would I think they deliver better results even for special needs kids, because you'd have
they'd be competing.
Right.
I am a part of NAGC. I have a call next week.
People
with
criticize
the
that say
rest of the
Catholic education
EDs
doesn't
in
have to
different
deal with
states,
special needs
and
kids and stuff
we,
like that, but I'm bringing
I
up,
would love to
if
be
those kids
competitive
carried a
in that way
backpack, a check with them in their
serve these kids, have
backpack,
a
you would have
service
solutions
mandate for these
come before now.
compared
If
to
Dave
other states
Yost
that
is in
don't
charge
identify
of
and
this,
serve.
if Dave Yost is in charge, let's talk about how our government works here. That would become ECOT. Remember ECOT, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
The online learning that was a complete boondoggle. Why? Because it was based on a guy making huge political contributions to people like Dave Yost. It was what do you call that? Like corporate crony capitalism, or it became a joke. We wasted tens of millions of dollars on this. And the funny part, had ECOT worked, ECOT was supposed to be an online learning system as an alternative to traditional school.
Not so sure.
Had it worked, how valuable would it have been when COVID happened? You get what I'm saying, Mark? Like it was being put in place, I think 4 or 5 years before COVID.
Long before.
It became a huge fiscal boondoggle that's kind of like a First Energy Larry Householder scam, but it's Dave Yost. And in Ohio, isn't it funny, everybody, how Dave Yost He totally missed the whole Larry Householder thing until after the feds got involved. Dave Yost and our traditions of attorney generals in Ohio never bring any political accountability in Ohio for corruption. It always is from the outside, from the feds, because they look the other way. Remember, what was the, we've had several speakers of the House in a row
My question is
that have had
added expense,
FBI issues.
Is that really truly?
What was the name of the guy?
Because money.
It's not Roethlisberger, like the quarterback, but remember the guy who had the apartment, the Speaker of the House? Rosenberg. Okay. Where's the justice in these things? Where's anybody? Where are the people on the side of giving the money to fund this? Where are they going to jail? There's a reason why we're the number one most corrupt state in the country when it comes to campaign finance.
Of this nature,
Our top political officials like Dave
Through the
Yost
Vice Chair
benefit
to the
from it.
representative, these gifted professional development funds.
The
which are
same,
all
you know
talked
this, Mark,
about,
but the
are
same
$2
winner set
million a
CPAs
year.
was
I
the
think when
default
we are
accountant for
talking
all the
about
crooked
the
householder
overall
candidates.
budget,
Who
they're
else is
currently
winner set
in
CPAs? The
Dave Yost.
accountant for Dave Yost.
They're not
Dave
added
Yost.
into next year's. I'm
They're
simply
all
asking for them to
symbiotic.
be
They're all
retained. When
corrupt.
I am
And
talking
what
about
musical chairs Dave
GIS
Yost trying to
system
rotate into
ratios,
right
I know
now?
that those numbers are significantly
Governor?
larger.
Governor.
What I would like
That
to
was a
say
bad
is that
choice.
for a student like your
Your
son,
chair might not be there, Dave.
I think that
That's-
there are some
it's
schools.
By the
that
way,
do
that's why it's
really,
so
really
important
well
that we get Vivek Ramaswamy
when
in
it
there. Whether you
comes to
like
the
him or don't like him,
in those schools.
it will be
The
a
classes are
disruption to the
challenging enough,
absolutely corrupt
the
political
courses
system in
are
Ohio
hard
of
enough, and
revolving
some are
chair
even
rhinos.
using AI,
I think
like
it's
you
also
mentioned. I
important
was
we
a
get the
part
right
of the
LG,
then
the
Lieutenant
Governor
Hughes
pick,
Sed's
Chris.
AI and Education Work Group, and we talked a lot about how we can look at a class
You
and
could pick
say
you, that would be
these kids
cool.
are all going to learn
Yeah.
about different variables in algebra.
Who would
but
you
gifted kids,
have
why
in
don't
mind?
we use AI to take it a few steps further?
Who would
while
what?
We're still in the class.
Who would you have in mind?
And so yes, that doesn't.
Secretary of State
I
Frank
would say
Burroughs?
someone like Ron
I'm
Ferguson.
talking about gifted kids who aren't getting any services
Yeah, I don't think
at
that's
all
gonna
in their
happen.
classroom. I
Yeah.
want to make
He,
sure that we're looking at these GIS to
he knows
Who did
where
you
all the
say?
bodies
Hold on,
are
before I
buried.
just this up. Who'd you say?
decreasing the ratio,
Ron
increasing
Ferguson?
the number of GISs in this state.
I
to
think I
make
might
sure
be
that gifted
misplacing
kids
that
aren't
name
being
with
left
somebody else.
behind
I
in the
retract my
capacity.
thing. Tell me why. Who's Ron Ferguson and why?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He's in the House. He's from Wintersville, I think.
Okay.
Seeing none, thank you for
And
testimony.
he's,
Our
he
next
really
witness is
knows
Dr. Justin Benoit from Ohio
the way
Cardiac
the
Arrest
process
Registry
works.
To enhance survival.
Okay.
So he can be a thorn. He knows how to wield political power or deal with being in the minority on an issue and how to leverage whatever you can leverage to get things done. And he knows
Like
where all the
having
bodies
Marco
are.
Rubio.
What's that?
Like having Marco Rubio.
Vice Chair
Like you have
Novella,
outsiders like
members of the
Elon
House
Musk and
Finance
JD
Committee,
Vance,
thank you
but
for
you
the
also have Marco
opportunity to
Rubio,
speak
so
today.
somebody's going to know.
I'm Dr. Justin Benoit, and I'm before you today
Yeah,
as the chair of the
I don't know
all
if
the
Marco
insider
Rubio
or where the
would-
bodies are.
to enhance
I'm
survival
trying to think
Ohio
of
cares.
who the
Imagine
best,
witnessing
like,
a
I
family
mean,
member
literally
unexpectedly
technical.
collapse to the
I mean,
ground.
he's got a
What
great.
about Jim Renacci?
Heart
Shouldn't Jim
attack
Renacci be
is much
lieutenant
worse.
governor?
Cardiac arrest, the heart isn't pumping at all.
I'll plead the fifth. I'll take the
You're
fifth.
unconscious, not breathing, and will die in
yeah.
10 minutes if you do nothing.
That's why I think Ron would be a
Cardiac
good
arrest is
pick.
the
And he's an
quintessential
outsider.
medical
You know, the
emergency, and
system
it is
doesn't
not
like
a rare
him,
event.
but
Okay.
his
It happens
constituents
30
do, and
times a day
all
in
the
Ohio.
conservatives
That's
do.
10,000
He's got a
Ohioans
great deal of
annually,
respect.
And only 10% survive. It happens to both kids and adults. The
There's
sick
some of the
and healthy.
conservatives, and
It
they're
can
not,
happen
I don't
to
know that they're the
literally
same, and I don't
anyone in
follow
this
as much,
room
but
today.
I thought, you know who you first,
Treatment,
when you said Ron
CPR,
Ferguson, I was thinking you said
cardiopulmonary
Ron Hood.
resuscitation. You push
No,
very
no, no,
fast
no.
in the center of the
And,
chest.
you know, you have this
Staying
example
alive
of
by the
these
Bee
people
Gees.
that clothe themselves in
become that
conservative and all that kind of
person's
stuff that are
being
pretty much
CPR
ineffective.
works so
And
well that it can
like John
triple the
Becker,
chance
when
of
he was
survival.
my rep
But
at the time
you
when he
must
was in,
start doing
can give a little
CPR
fiery
immediately.
speech, can pander
Isn't time to
to
wait
a
for the
certain
life
base,
squad or the police.
but they're not very
This is
smart and
especially
they're not
true
very
in rural
effective.
areas of Ohio.
And I don't know
And then
Ron
they go
Ferguson.
off-
I
then
was
they go
thinking
off-
Ron Hood when you said that, so that's my bad.
Yeah, then they go
Exceeded
off
20
into the
Regular Ohioans,
ecosystem
bystanders,
of
need to
those
do CPR.
organizations like
And
these people
unfortunately,
here and others
Ohio is
around
third worst in the
government
United States at performing
in a holding
CPR.
pattern until they
We
can
only
come back
perform
in. and they sat out a term because we've got these musical chair kind of term limits.
And
well below the best states at 75%.
Where's Ron Hood now? He's head of some organization.
I don't know, he's probably not working. You know where I would guess any of these people not working a private sector job.
And analyzes the
Or if he
entire
is,
chain
it's
of
going to be
survival
some
for
crony
cardiac
place
arrest.
where they
That's
get government
actions by
money.
the public, 911 call centers, first responders, police, EMS agencies, and hospitals. Without Ohio Cares, there is no way to know if efforts to improve survival are working, such as high school CPR classes. Rural communities in Ohio in particular have neither the tax base nor the personnel to solve this problem on their own. And although there are many hardworking
Sorry, I
paramedics,
keep
police
forgetting to
officers, community members, and physicians like me who
mute
volunteer
my
their
mic when
time
I'm typing.
trying to solve this problem, the CPR numbers clearly show
God, I'm looking at
Ohio is
Ron
not doing
Hood's
enough. This
Wikipedia
statewide
entry.
problem
I don't
needs
think
a
he's
statewide
probably a
solution.
victim of Wikipedia editing
However,
his entry.
Ohio Cares currently receives only $25,000 per year from the state of Ohio, well below other states with superior CPR metrics, and without additional funding, Ohio Cares will cease to exist in 2025. As chairman of Ohio Cares, I'm asking you to support amendment number HC.
The last thing it says on his
0257 to
political
House Bill
career is that on
96.
February 1,
This amendment will
2022, he
appropriate
announced he would
funds
run for
to
governor
the
in
Ohio Department of Public
That's the end of
Safety
the
for
public
Ohio Cares. These funds will not only maintain Ohio Cares, but enable us to dramatically increase our efforts to improve bystander CPR throughout rural communities in Ohio. This goal of Ohio Cares aligns perfectly with Governor DeWine's new Every Minute Counts campaign, and we have the full support of Director Andy Wilson of the Ohio Department of Public Safety, Director Wagner of Ohio EMS, the Ohio EMS Chiefs Association, the American Heart Association, and numerous public safety and EMS agencies in Ohio as shown in our letters of support. This truly is a matter of life and death for Ohioans. Please support funding for Ohio Cares. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benoit. Questions for our witness? Representative Hoops.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So Ron Hood is now with the
2
Right
years
to
ago,
Work
and
Committee.
that's when the football player almost, and you guys, because of the being able to.
He
do
got
what
out
he
of
needed to
office
do
and
to
went to
save
work
his
for,
life.
an
Why are you
issues-based
saying that if you
organization,
don't
and
get the-
he'll sit out, he'll be back.
25,000 that it will cease to exist? What's happening out there that we're not aware of and that you need more funds?
Yeah, thank you, through the vice chair to the representative. Right now, we have basically existed on donations, and this obviously is challenging and gobbles up a lot of time, especially for volunteers who are trying to improve these numbers. So right now, the only funding that comes from the state is the $25,000, and really asking for donations is, we can stay afloat, but only for so long. So I think that is why really at the end of this year, we just, we don't have the manpower to, keep going. We can't pay people to actually process these numbers and things like that. And so we're asking the state to try to contribute more. The $500,000 that is in our proposal, $500,000 per year, is really meant to try to not only just maintain, but improve and actually make these numbers better in Ohio. But in all honesty, any funding would be better than the $25,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's an interesting way to pitch
Seeing none, thanks for your testimony. Oh, I'm sorry.
your
Representative
need
White.
for money.
So obviously we're getting a lot of requests for money. So when you look at the outcomes you've been able to generate, which do you think is the most compelling reason out of all of them for us to keep doing this from a standpoint of how it's benefiting outcomes?
Yeah, through the chair, representative. I think we have very specifically targeted rates of bystander CPR because they are so critical. So really, to date, all we've been able to do is just try to process the numbers and be able to show what the problem is. If we actually had increased funding, we could actually attack the problem. And I think that's why I put this graph up, not so much to say, Ohio, we're doing terribly, but to show what's possible. So for example, right around here at the 50% mark, that's Illinois Cares. Cares has state organizations across the United States. They receive $500,000 a year, and they have a bystander CPR rate of about 50%. So just bringing Ohio up to average, to that dotted line, we estimate that would save an additional 100 Ohioans every year. So in terms of an outcome, that's exactly what we would be targeting.
So this is it.
to see
If
that
we
rate
spend
go
more
up,
money, we
and
save
that's
more
what
lives,
people
but there'll
that
never be a
benefit.
report on how did the last money save lives.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and for explaining this to us. So can I clarify something really quick? So the funding that we give right now allows you to collate the data and to tell us we have a problem. You're asking for more funding so that we can do targeted things to fix the problem. All right, thank you. And just to add on to that, I had not got that before, so thank you for coming in. And I think, you know, as a state, when we think about where we're putting money, we've heard about CPR in classes. My son's actually going to CPR class, I think, today. But as people everywhere, you know, it's helpful to have people know CPR, and it's felt like just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing who learns it. So I appreciate the data-driven way and appreciate all you do. So thank you.
Yeah, if I may.
Please.
Again, through Vice Chair, thank you for the comment and question. Just to emphasize a few points, the $25,000, again, is not enough for us to sustain. So without additional funding, we won't even know what we're doing in the state of Ohio. And so, for example, school CPR programs, which are good and fundamental, we won't even know if they're working. Is anybody?
I wonder how many donations they get from like the Ohio Medical Association or the Nurses Association or the Nurse Practitioners Association or people in the industry. It'd be very interesting to look at their contributors.
Not a generic one-size-fits-all. This problem.
I mean, you know, some of
Well,
these cardiac.
go look at, so everybody knows, like we have a hodgepodge campaign finance reporting system in Ohio. We have stuff on the state level, the Secretary of State, where these people file in a portal there. It's exceptionally poorly done. It is not easy. You cannot drill to receipts. All the things that, you know, when I worked for IBM, American Express was doing that 20 years ago. You know, that I could drill down to the receipt online. Not our systems, not Frank LaRosa's systems. And so, but you also have the hodgepodge of reporting at the county level versus at the Secretary of State level. No integrated system, and nothing that causes county boards of elections to, for example, even put campaign finance reports online. And I don't know, Mark, I know when you ran for senator, you had to do federal. Even the forms and stuff for the Ohio campaign finance reporting system are like they were designed by people that have learning disabilities. They make note, they're cumbersome. They are error prone. They don't allow for any capture of the data in a systematic way for analysis. You know, but they don't, but here's the thing people don't understand. These politicians don't want campaign finance to work well. They don't want it to be transparent.
No.
They want it to be hard as hell. And I'll tell you, if you go, like if I went to Brian Stewart's or you went to your rep's campaign reporting on the Secretary of State site, and you drill into it, you're going to get somewhere. If you actually want the underlying data and you make a request, it's going to take like 30 days to get because they're going to slow walk it to where it is, and nobody's run. And who wants to run for Secretary of State now? Who's a revolving chair to run for Secretary of State?
Sprague. Robert
okay,
Sprague.
Sprague, the treasurer. Now he's nice to be Secretary of State. He was the treasurer. You know, by the way, one of the big jokes, because everything's like a joke that these guys do, I think, a lot of it, is you had Sprague, the open checkbook stuff. That's a joke. If you've ever tried to actually use the open checkbook, it's not terrible, but it's these things are designed, you know, they make, you know what they do, by the way, the treasurer's office forever has reported every time a new governmental entity comes on the open checkbook, and they'll say like, oh, now we got like, you know, 500 people on the open checkbook. But what happens is a significant percentage of them don't, once they're on, never update their data.
Never update, right.
And so at one time, I haven't looked at it recently, at one time, probably half of the people who are on open checkbook didn't actually update their data. So it was a useless checkbook. Of those that did update their data, a lot of them did it very much in arrears. So the data would be way out of date.
Chris, I wanted to show this. We were talking about schools and money.
Yeah.
This is the breakdown over time of students, teachers, principals, and assistant principals, and then administrative staff in terms of growth rates. So from the year 2000 to 2021, administrative staff grew 95%, while teachers and students grew 5%. And we wonder why our school taxes in Ohio are so high.
Well, and you wonder why gives such bad result. Top-heavy organizations with a lot of. Do you need management in a company? Absolutely. And I'm a proponent of, in a lot of ways, hierarchical management. People don't people like, oh, we should all be like working at home wearing sandals and flip-flops and do our own thing. You and I have seen what makes projects work, I think, and there has to be an element of hierarchy. There has to be an element of a plan there. But you have that that increase in bureaucracy. Have you ever seen the thing on how many how many generals there are in the U.S. military now versus like whatever they call, like it's like maybe 3-star and above would be like your top echelons. In all of World War II, we had like 4. And now we have like 40
some humor here, right?
at that same level. Like we could do it with like, who do we have in MacArthur, Patton, Bradley? There were like
They are
it's
commonsensical.
4 or 5
21st
generals that
century
were,
approach
I
to
think, whatever it was, 3-star and above in World War II, in all of World War
There's a
II.
lot
Now we have like 40 of them.
Consolidation going on.
So Tom Young here is from Dayton, and he's Phil Plummer's like student. So the two of them go together everywhere. They do everything together. They always vote the same. They're for the same things. It's really kind of sad to see a guy his age have to take orders from a guy like Phil Plummer.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Is there any opposition to this? I've not heard anything. Anything that you've brought up in the past, I haven't heard any negative response.
What is this guy
Is
asking
there
for? So it's the
opposition to this?
Funeral Directors
Through the chair to the
Association.
No, I see none. These are just, again, as you mentioned, not heavy lifts. They're just little pieces of things.
All
that we
the
pay
bureaucrats
attention
speak
to in our
heavy lifts.
association to make sure we're taking care of our membership and Ohio families.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
There
Mr.
needs to
Chairman.
be like a, what do you call the
Thank you, Mr.
Urban
Chairman.
Dictionary
Thank you, Mr.
of
Adams.
bullshit
Refreshing to have
management
someone
terms
come in
people
here and
say?
testify, and nothing
Heavy
in here is
lifting.
asking for any more money. So we appreciate that.
We could put that on
in
a
terms of,
committee
other
hearing
issues,
bingo
I know
card.
There was an issue a few years ago.
That would be great. That's a great idea, because this would definitely be political speak, heavy lifting, some sort of alliance, or what do you call that when it's like, across the state, some alliance?
Oh yeah, partnership's a big
Partnership,
thing. Yeah, we're going to be a public-private partnership.
Dispute about that as to who actually.
Just remember, when politicians say public-private partnership, you're best to assume, substitute the words money
Without getting
laundering.
into a lot of the detail that I
Public-private, like we have a public-private partnership with
It's
Zelensky.
just asking that anyone that were to sell funeral merchandise be regulated through the Federal Trade Commission, uphold the standards and the rules that they have everyone that sells any funeral merchandise uphold, and to have the correct licensure to do so, so that the consumer is, purchasing those through the appropriate channels, and that's basically, I believe, what the little battle was about. But there is an understanding, and cemeteries do sell merchandise as well as funeral homes, and also consumers can buy them on their own. So,
Representative Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you today for your testimony. Just curious, because cremation is so final, is there any other way to verify that it's okay that we're cremating if we don't require a signature?
yes, through the chair to the representative. Good question. It's not asking to not require a signature. It's asking that we don't require a witness of the person signing the document, so that signature to be then additionally witnessed by another individual. Currently, there's a signature made by the authorizing agent.
Can you use an auto pen like
The next
our
of kin, if you would, for the
last
cremation to take
guy?
place. And then whether that
Maybe
funeral
only on
director
pardons.
with that
Maybe auto
individual in
pens
the
can
room
only be
witnessing
used
that
on pardons.
identification.
You need an
of that
auto pen.
Signature. We're just saying that that's sort of a redundant and unnecessary portion of that process at this point in time. The person that steps forward to take authorization for the cremation is.
Somebody told me that Larry Householder had some sort of a
So it just uncomplicates
auto
the
pen
process,
function
especially with
for correspondence,
signatures
and one of
and
his things was to have what appeared to be personal correspondence with all these people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I
And
understand
one
the
time they made a
remote may be
mistake on a
challenging,
rep
but
name
the
or
in-part
something,
person seems like
and
it
that
would
he
take
he would have known the
every
correct
effort to
name, and
ensure that's
so
the right
so the
person, because one thing we can't do
that tipped
is
off the
bring
person
those
that
people
got it
back.
that it was this wasn't a legit personal note.
Absolutely, through the chair.
You know, it'd
Representative.
be like if I wrote a note to you and I
Again,
had your
once-
name wrong,
when we
you know, or
sit down
something
with
like
the
this.
person that
I
has
might have
been,
Paquita wrong, but yeah, that would just be.
designated to be
But if I had,
That'd be easy.
this position,
you know, if I held you Maryland or something,
document,
and
they've
so the
represented themselves to that person,
so
their proof of next
you know
of
that.
kin, and
You know, it's
through
all like a
multiple
facade
ways,
to
we
try to
do go
create the
down a list
illusion of
who the person is in front of us,
a
and make sure there's
personal
no one with
connection.
superior authority.
The
with
auto
regard to
pens,
the-
but you need
and
auto
the
pen.
fact there's
You
someone
could just
with
have an
superior
auto pen
authority, so it
thing.
is a very
You should do
lengthy-
your streams marked
So
with an
just
auto
full
pen thing in the
disclosure,
background,
I've
just
worked
signing
for
thing
years
after thing.
with funeral homes.
Just working in the background, signing
That's why I raised the question,
Just the
because
thing,
I
dropping
know
paper into the
terrible
platter.
that can be.
with
signing,
Sarah
next piece
coming
of
and
paper,
taking
signing.
one out of one bin and putting something in the other.
Maybe you need to get like an intern that every now and then there's a young person that comes behind you
So,
and
so
is
Mike
like
DeVille,
unloading
this is a
reams
good,
of documents
this
on
guy's,
the auto
this
pen
guy's a
machine.
good example, right? He was in the Ohio House and he left and now he's back. And he is just having a grand time being the vice chairman
Yeah,
of
Columbus
this
City Schools.
committee.
I'm a
He is
parent.
just so happy and so excited.
Vice Chairman Davila and members of the House Finance Committee.
Now, given
thank
that
you
this
for the
woman does
opportunity
not have
to
a pen and
testify
is just
today.
wearing a t-shirt,
My
I wonder
name
if this
is
could
Meredith
actually be a
Dowds, and I'm
citizen.
Columbus
Let's
City
see.
Schools parent. I testify today responding to House Bill 96 regarding cutting
So,
school funds from my school district, Columbus City
I was
Schools.
told that citizen
These funds are
participation
vital
started
to our
at
district
10:30
to best
mark,
serve
so it's now
students, staff, and
12:09,
families.
and this might be the
My
first
son has
citizen
special
talking.
needs. He attends full-day school through Columbus City Schools. He receives therapy
If
and
our
intervention at
government
school,
cared about
both crucial
citizens,
to keep him
Brian Stewart
progressing,
would have said, we're
developing,
going to have
and
any citizen who
he
has
is
traveled
fully
here to speak,
capable of
speak
growing
before
into
any
an adult
lobbyists.
citizen someday who will contribute to and give back to his
But
community.
instead, what they
as
do
long
is they
as he
want
has the
citizens to
supports
feel
he needs
small.
from a young age.
So you sit
Yeah.
in the
A
room
significant
for an
impact
hour
of
and a
the
half,
cuts
2
include
hours,
early childhood
and
education
before you're allowed to
programs where my
talk.
son
And it's
is
an honor
currently
to be able to
enrolled.
talk to your esteemed
Our
representative.
district is growing and progressing.
And then you got to get up
have
and you
unique
got to,
needs and
you know,
challenges.
thank all of them. And then you
School
got to
funding
do
is
that
essential to
nonsense through the
increase,
chair,
if
blah, blah,
anything,
blah.
to
I mean,
help
they
us
waste
continue
more
to meet
time
the
on
needs of our
that. That's
students,
probably 10% of the
especially with
time people are
consideration
speaking
to
is all
adjusting
that
costs of educating a child in 2025.
formality that just,
House Bill
you know,
96 proposes to cut
we don't wear suits
school
and ties
funding
and
a staggering
wingtips and
number of over
white
45 million
starch
over the
button-down
next 2
shirts
years.
anymore at work, but we
These cuts
continue
will put
this
essential programs and services at
facade
risk.
within government.
Our community voted in favor of our school levy because the
Have you
majority
ever heard
saw
in
the need
Ohio,
for
DeWine, or
increased
anybody
funds
talk
to
about having
continue
a
to
systematic
support our
program
district's
to
growth.
eliminate poverty?
The voters have
No.
already spoken on the
They just
matter
want
of
to
school
get more
funding
money to,
needs for our
to,
district's
to enable it,
support.
basically.
Yeah, you and
not
I,
this.
you and I have talked about this many times. If you made poverty a project to get rid of, and you
While many
gave,
may rightly choose private education,
let's say you and
or
I, if you
homeschooling,
said,
public
Mark,
education
Chris,
is
we're going to
often
give
the
you the
entry point
poverty
to
project in
accessibility for
Ohio,
many
and
families,
for every
especially
person
those
you
with
raise
special
above the
needs
poverty
children.
line, we will
Our
give
city and
you
community
$10,000, which would be
Be all about
which would be a which would be a bargain for
unjust
them.
weight and unnecessary burden
We
placed
would
on
be
all about it.
billionaires.
students and their families if such school funds were cut. A government not willing to support the needs of its children and their future by cutting vital school funds is unacceptable in a democratic society. Our children are not here today to speak on this matter. We, the people, will make their voices heard. And I'm not an official representative for the district, obviously, but I would be happy to answer.
I think this
any
obviously
questions
is
you
the
might have
first,
about
mom or
Yeah.
whatever.
I'm looking at
And
a
you know
picture
what?
of
Good
him
for
right
her for
now.
doing this.
He has, in this picture, made letter A with popsicle sticks, and he is sitting in a classroom with other children learning. Our family has been blessed by our school, and I would be happy to answer any questions personally to give testimony if you would like. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Dowd. Are there questions for the witness? Representative Glassburn. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you know, a lot of folks who come and testify before us are, for lack of a better term, professionals or advocates in their field. We saw you sitting there all day yesterday, and you coming back today. to really advocate.
So
for
she's
your
been there
child.
2
I
days.
appreciate you doing that.
Unbelievable.
Thank you very much for coming.
Because they had public participation at some point yesterday also. Maybe she ran out of time. They ran out of time for her.
Unbelievable.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you so much for coming back today. I know you, like Representative Glassburn said, I watched you sitting.
Chris, I'm going to step away.
through all
I
of
need a
our
coffee.
testimony yesterday. So thank you for.
Do you want
for,
to, Mark, I
being
need to
the
do some
fierce
other stuff too.
Yeah, me too.
You're just going to leave this role and then
Yeah, I'll just
maybe
let it roll.
later today, if we
elaborate a
want to
little
get back
bit
on, we
about
can, but
what
hopefully,
kinds of
That's
I
a good
appreciate
idea.
you
your
doing this.
son
Hopefully the
receives
citizens of
and
Ohio
the
appreciate
They're going to be
you doing
taking a
this.
lunch
has
break
made
here
for
for an
him.
hour and 15 minutes soon, so.
My son has a neurological disorder.
Thanks for
and
doing
also
this. This
known
was
as
fun. Maybe we
autism,
should
which
do
is
this more
affecting
often.
Many children today.
think it's- until you
Because
get
it's a
sick of listening
neurological
to me talk.
disorder, it comes from the brain. Everything from the brain comes down. So it affected his speech,
Adios.
fine motor skills, gross motor skills, social skills, cognition, problem-solving skills. While he didn't experience significant developmental delays, it was enough that it was a global developmental delay, and he was not able to interact and perform functional tasks. So our family has chosen the route of public funding. He went through the Franklin County Board of DD first, and now is in Columbus City Schools. He receives pragmatic speech goals and is now talking to his classmates. He receives occupational therapy and physical therapy at school. There's a growing number of children that are neurodivergent. The needs will continue to increase. And like I said, these children are fully capable of growing to become citizens that will contribute. They just need extra supports.
Brief follow-up, Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And again, thank you for that, Meredith. You mentioned that Columbus voted on a school levy. I think that was last year.
Yes, in 2023.
Can you talk about what your expectations as a taxpayer, what were your expectations with how those levy dollars would be spent?
Yes. I would expect, thank you, through the chair to the representative, in addition to being a Columbus City Schools parent, I'm an early childhood educator typically when I'm not taking care of my child. The early childhood education program, specifically expanding those programs, is something that I would like to see happen with those tax dollars. The funds would need diverted from the tax levy to fill the gap if these funds are cut. And the early childhood education program is one that would be significantly impacted by the cuts. 3 to 5 years of age is a crucial window of development, and we need to ensure that these programs are not at risk.
Thank you.
Representative Plummer.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Thanks for grabbing me in the hallway. Sorry about the confusion. You spent your time here, but thanks for the Vice Chair for hearing me and letting you speak. This is the people's house, and as my colleague across the aisle said, we get a lot of professionals here, but it really helps when the people come here and talk to us from the heart. So thank you for your time and your patience, and we apologize for the inconvenience.
That's okay. Thank you, Representative Plummer.
Representative White.
Thank you, Ms. Dowd, for coming in. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair. I had a question regarding transportation. So your child has special needs. You're certainly aware of other parents with special needs. Have there been issues with transportation for special needs children? And what does the legislature need to know about that?
Yes, so thank you, through the chair to the Representative White. Our family doesn't personally do public school transportation, so I will be honest that I don't know exactly how the legislation could potentially affect, but I do know that within our school district there is strong demand for transportation, and that will absolutely hinder children if the legislation would cut funding, would cut the transportation in any way. We have a lot of children depending on that, as well as the meals provided.
Representative Hoops.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony and coming back. You know, one of the issues, I guess, out there is where you can find the services that you need for your child. And it sounds like the public education, Columbus City, is really doing a great job doing that. Did you ever go try and find another area and found, you know, like a private charter or any type of school like that, and just found that they could not do it? And so has that ever entered your mind as a family to look at that? And then what was the results? Because it sounds like you really don't have to go looking, but did you ever do that?
Through the chair to the representative, thank you for that question. Yes, there is the Autism Scholarship available, and that's something that our family has looked into extensively. For my child's disability specifically, a lot of those providers in Ohio are ABA providers. That is a wonderful option for a lot of children that may want the applied behavior therapy. It can be an intensive therapy for a lot of children, and so right now the majority are ABA providers. There are actually not very many private schools in Franklin County that take the Autism Scholarship. Right now I'm aware of just about 2 or 3. So we're talking limited numbers of private schools. Now, our family would like for our son to be included with peers, which is one reason why we choose private school or public school. Public school is currently the most inclusive option that we have found to meet our son's needs where he falls on the spectrum. So we think that it is critical with the growing number of children that are neurodivergent that the funding stay with public schools to keep these children enrolled.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes, please proceed.
You mentioned that you went to a private school, but they would not take could they have taken the funds for that, but they decided not to do that? And why was that?
Through the chair to the representative, we haven't attended a private school, just that in the times that we have accessed the Department of Education website and looked at the providers that take the Autism Scholarship, there's just a very small number of private schools, just a couple that are not ABA providers, which again is a different form of education than a private public school. There's only a couple that we found in Franklin County that do take that scholarship. So there's also the issue of numbers of private schools for children with autism available to families.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you for your determination to come speak with us. And my family has an autistic grandson, and he is a very intelligent young man. And it's alarming the number of autism that keeps increasing instead of decreasing in our country. And I think more research needs to be done in that, what's causing this and why. But I too am concerned about cuts to the NEDD program myself, because, it hits me too. And I admire your passion, and maybe we need to put some parameters and guidelines and guardrails to protect people like your son. So thank you. No follow-up.
Thank you, Representative Johnson.
Representative White had a follow-up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dowd. My question is, my understanding is the John Peterson Scholarship and the Autism Scholarship can be used by families, perhaps the John Peterson more, in public schools to get additional therapies and services that their schools aren't providing. So I'm going to take a look at that, but if there are services that your public school isn't able to provide that you could benefit as a family member from, because you've obviously looked at this, if you would follow up with my office, because I'm interested in looking at making sure that scholarship is as flexible as possible for our families with kids with special needs, which a lot of us are touched by that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for testifying. I think we're all excited to have a non-professional person here, so we appreciate your passion and your advocacy. So something that you answered in Rep. Johnson's question, it made me start thinking, can you talk a little bit about your comment on the inclusive environment of public education and beyond the academic benefits of choosing public education for your son, other benefits for being in an inclusive environment, both to him and to his classmates that you've seen? Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to the representative. So at Columbus City, I can just share the answer to that question, describing what we're considering for placement for our son for next year, that he would be enrolled in a general education classroom with peers. That would be crucial to his social development and learning because he learns from observation of others. That's actually very important for children on the spectrum. They learn from modeling and watching what other people do. So for him to be enrolled in a general education classroom with a large number of neurotypical students is beneficial to his development. It's also beneficial for the neurotypical children to be paired with neurodivergent children because, as I said, there are so many more children that learn and interact in a different way, and we're all capable of adjusting a little bit. But with the general education classroom, there's a lot more pushing into the classrooms to keep the children in the room. So for Columbus City, I know that the kindergarten program specifically where we're looking for our son, they are bringing the intervention specialists into the rooms as much as possible to keep the children in the room with their peers.
Representative Young.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, you are the best expert because you're a mom, right?
Thank you.
And I thank you very much for coming. And your story is touching, and we get it. I mean, we do. We work in an environment that has parameters, obviously, and they're on both sides of the aisle here. We feel for what you are going through. My question is, I want to go back, and I know that if the team that is working with your child, if they include the SPED transportation with the IEP, are you saying that he does not have an IEP?
Through the chair to the representative, my son does have an IEP.
Okay, but the team, if the team, it's a federal law, but if the SPED transportation is an agreement and his team should put that element into his IEP for transportation, you might want to bring that up. I don't know if you have or if they've discussed that. That's an essential part of that SP program.
Yes. Through the chair to the representative, thank you. And I definitely think that I will bring that up. My family specifically doesn't need the transportation, but I think that that's really important for me to share with other families that do perhaps need the transportation. So
A follow-up?
Yes, please proceed.
How old is your son?
He's 6.
Okay, so as he gets older, that may be something that's needed. Right now, I know you want to hold him as close, and I agree, hold him close, right? But that might be something you want to ask about that program.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions? Representative Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although everyone already asked my question, but the most important question I wanted to, statement I wanted to say was thank you for being here today. Your voice is powerful, and I'm sure you'll inspire other people to do the same. But I just wanted to highlight what you were talking about students being in a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment that allows them to grow, I think, because that's the piece that's often missing. Your son grows because he's accepted, he feels like he's in a part, he's not having to learn in isolation because he's different. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Representative Sims.
Well, thank you, Ms. Stout, for joining us today. I think you can tell by the robust participation of the committee that we really value your participation and joining us in the process as a citizen. We represent about 11.8 million Ohioans here, and your story is a very important one for all of us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Matt Misica from the Ohio Conservation Foundation.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Davila, members of the committee. My name is Matt Misica, and I am the Executive Director of the Ohio Conservation Federation. I'll take a moment to add that at best I'm a semi-pro advocate. The Ohio Conservation Federation is a coalition of sportsmen's organizations that educate and advocate for the wise use and stewardship of Ohio's wildlife and natural resources on behalf of Ohio's hunters, anglers, and trappers. Across the board, Ohio's sportsmen and women support robust funding for our state parks and forests, scenic rivers and natural areas, public hunting and fishing, and healthy waters and wildlife. Today, I would like to focus on 2 areas of the budget. Ohio's sportsmen strongly support the proposed increase to the non-resident hunting and fishing fees. Ohio is the destination state for trophy class whitetail deer hunting and world-class walleye fishing in the Midwest. The updated non-resident fee structure in House Bill 96 would bring Ohio in line with other top-tier deer hunting states and better reflects what it would cost Ohio hunters and anglers to hunt and fish out of state. Additionally, these changes would prolong the period before Ohio would have to consider raising the cost of resident hunting and fishing licenses. On the other hand, Ohio's sportsmen are strongly opposed to proposed changes to the state's land royalty language as part of Ohio Revised Code Section 131.50. Ohio hunters pay for the bulk of conservation in Ohio through user-paid excise taxes on the purchase of firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment as part of the Federal Wildlife Restoration Act, also known as Pittman-Robertson. This money is then returned to sportsmen in the form of matching dollars to enhance wildlife and habitat conservation. To receive Ohio's share of our federal funds and remain in compliance with federal law, bonus payments, royalties, and interest derived from lands that were purchased or managed with Pittman-Robertson dollars must be returned to the division with the direct management control where the extraction took place. House Bill 96 removes language that requires the funds be transferred to the division where the extraction took place and strips the requirements that the transfer be made in a timely 30 days. Both of these threaten Ohio's ongoing compliance and jeopardize sportsmen's access to as much as $20 million in conservation funding annually. We do understand that an amendment may be forthcoming that will restore the 30-day language and return Section 131.50 to its original promise to the sportsmen and women that depend on Ohio's public lands to pursue our uniquely American hunting heritage. And we will likely support this amendment. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. Ohio's sportsmen and women encourage you to take the recommendations of the hunting, angling, and trapping community into consideration during budget deliberations and fully fund the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and clear the barriers to land royalty transfers. If I can be of any further assistance or answer any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Masika. Questions for our witness? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony today. Appreciate it. Our next witness is Deacon Nick Bates from Hunger Network, Ohio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I should have brought snacks for everybody like I do for my children's sermons. Chair Stewart, Vice Chair DeVille, and Ranking Member Sweeney, my name is Nick Bates. I'm a deacon, and I'm here today to emphasize the impact of hunger in Ohio and 3 strategic efforts that we can do in this budget to reduce hunger for hardworking Ohioans. I'm going to try to summarize my testimony here today for brevity's sake. We work with lots of groups around the state, many faith and community organizations. That's where we derive our policy platform and our level of expertise. As we know, childhood hunger has many bad consequences: learning barriers, lifelong health issues, and other hurdles to long-term economic stability and success. Addressing childhood hunger minimizes these negative outcomes. Hunger exists in more than just young children. We have seen rises in hunger among senior citizens who often don't have enough resources coming in, caring for grandchildren, aging parents, and other barriers, and often rely on our food pantries for healthy food, the kind of food that's purchased through the agricultural clearance program here in the state. Hunger is going up in Ohio. Ohio saw an 11.3% increase in the rate of food insecurity for Ohioans last year, and the U.S. saw an 8.9% increase in food insecurity. So not only is our rate higher than the national average, but we are increasing at a quicker rate. Now, food at home prices, when we look at the inflation calculation, was only 1.2% last year, but the 5% in 2023, and the 11.4% inflationary rate on that food at home category, 11.4% in 2022 has a long-lasting negative impact on families' ability to secure enough food. I want to emphasize that food insecurity is not the stereotype that we often think of. About 30% of Ohioans live below that 200% of the federal poverty line. These are families that are working day in and day out, but that I've interacted with through our soccer teams and Cub Scout and Scout troops, youth groups, and so many other groups that I've worked with over the years. Hundreds of these families that we've interacted with, and they've confided in me that they have been struggling from time to time. Sometimes it's for a month or two, just to get over that one little hump of not working, that one little family illness. Other times, it sets them back, and it is a cloud that just overshadows their household month in and month out. So we propose and encourage the General Assembly to adopt 3 provisions in this budget. The first is around making sure our food banks are properly funded. We often in the faith community look to that story of Jesus multiplying loaves and fish and use that to describe what the food banks do. They take $1 donation and multiply that by 10 because of state support for their efforts, and they are able to purchase the fresh fruits and produce and meats that people need. When you go into a food pantry, the healthy food is often what is coming through the food bank system instead of just individual donations. We also believe that kids cannot learn on empty bellies. We often talk about the school transportation in here. We need to make sure we fill the tanks with fuel so that they can get kids to school. We need to also make sure that kids are filled up so that they can learn with healthy food each and every day. So we encourage you to support an expansion of the school meal program as well. Finally, we stand in support of the governor's proposed child tax credit that will target low and middle income families. I was talking to some scouts the other day, getting ready for track season, and they're talking about the importance of that start, getting off right. So when we look at young families with young children, getting that extra tax credit is a great way to help them get started in life. So in closing, faith communities, nonprofits, and others are working tirelessly to make sure our neighbors can receive their daily bread, but we cannot do it alone. We ask for your support for our food banks, school meals, and the proposed child tax credit. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. Representative Pickle Antonio.
Thank you, Vice Chair. First, I just want to say thank you, Deacon. You have been in Children and Human Services Committee, K-12 Education Committee, and back with us today with a message about how important it is to make sure that people are adequately fed. So thank you for that, and thank you for everything that you do to make sure that families are fed. I wondered if you could talk about, so let's say our kids are, let's assume that our children are getting the food that they need, which is not a fair assumption, but let's assume that. Can you talk about the impact to kids when their families aren't being adequately nourished?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to the representative, children notice when their moms and their dads and grandma and grandpa are struggling. They see it and they take on that stress. I have 2 children. Obviously, budget season's a busy time for me at work. My wife is a music teacher. Spring shows are all starting up. Our kids absorb that stress as well. So kids and families and households that are food insecure see mom and dad in the kitchen while they're eating dinner because parents are always giving up their own food so that their kids can eat. So they see that, they absorb that stress, they absorb that anxiety, which can contribute to the long-term negative consequences, just being surrounded by the hunger.
Representative Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for your testimony, Deacon Bates, and for your continued advocacy. So many areas on those Ohioans most in need. I'm glad you mentioned the SNAP benefit situation with our senior citizens because when the pandemic emergency was declared ended, as you've indicated, there's about 70,000 senior citizens in Ohio are receiving all of $23 a month in SNAP benefits. And we know, any of us, obviously, with the prices in the grocery store, probably going to get worse over the next few weeks. $23 isn't going that far. So, and Representative Josh Williams and I are soon, if we haven't already, introduced as a joint sponsorship a bill to have the states supplement that up to $50, and obviously we'll try and get it thrown in the budget, maybe the easy way, but certainly, what have you seen in terms of the experience of how 70,000 seniors out there are getting by with only $23,000 in benefits, or $23 a month in benefits?
23,000, that'd be very exciting. Let's do that. Sure, I follow that.
Well.
Through the chair to the representative, a lot of these older folks who are struggling to keep nutritious food on their table are resorting to our food pantry lines where then they don't have access to the healthy foods that they need, especially among people, who are getting up there in age. I've crossed that 40-year-old threshold and have started to notice my own metabolism going down. But we know that people in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s need to make sure they are eating well, are eating fresh produce, having the proteins and things. And those are where we have first seen the sacrifice, is moving over to the high sodium, kind of foods, the prepackaged foods that are often lower cost. So that was where we first started to see it. And now that our food pantries and our food banks are struggling to have enough fresh produce and proteins each and every week for clients, they are now having to continue to struggle. So over the long term, we anticipate to see increased healthcare costs that will be borne by the taxpayer if we can't make sure that there are nutritious food options for our seniors.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So you in the Hunger Network, and obviously we're seeing, news every day, and I was watching one of the news shows this morning about significant cuts in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I mean, how is that being analyzed, or you're still trying to figure it out? How problematic is that going to be, that the shortage of dollars that you have are going to be stretched and actually aren't going to cover as much as before?
Yeah, through the chair to the representative, the conversations at the federal level are very concerning. I right now don't have a comprehensive understanding of all the programs that have already been impacted. I have heard reports from some Ohio farmers that have partnered with our food banks that they are struggling with the loss of different governmental contracts and payments not coming through. So I have those kind of anecdotal stories, and there's obviously a lot of fear and anxiety as the feds are pulling back, because the thing that's going to get pulled back on first are going to be the dollars that we are able to spend with Ohio farmers to get those apples, to get that extra milk, get the proteins into our food pantry system and our food bank system.
Representative Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank you, Deacon, for coming in. Thanks for your the tireless work you and your organization do. I'm just wondering if you could talk about just from not only the importance of investment in school lunches, but the impact it has both on attendance and also on learning for students.
Thank you. Through the chair to the representative, I have a great story from a couple weeks ago. A friend of mine was out of town on for a training, and her husband has to go to work early, so he dropped their kids off at our house to take them to school with my daughter. They were third graders. My daughter's in fourth grade. And they were telling me how important it was that they got to school at this specific time so that they could get breakfast. So to see the excitement in those kids' faces and just like how they were lecturing me about school meals, I'm like, this is what we want to see in life. And I think that's descriptive of a lot of kids. You go, I mean, how many of us will gather with friends, for a meal, either, during the middle of the day or in the evening? We enjoy that social time. We enjoy breaking bread together, right? This is something that transcends cultures throughout human history, right? And kids enjoy that as well. So they anticipate, so we have seen it reduce tardiness, especially in schools when kids know that they have that breakfast opportunity. Parents are also like, sweet, I can get my kid to school early and get off to my work for the day. We also see kids more focused during the day. We hear that constantly from teachers, that children are going to be more focused when they are fed, less disruptive than for the other kids in the class. One hungry kid can disrupt the entire room.
Other questions? Seeing none, sir, thank you for your testimony.
Great. Thank you so much.
Now going to call up Scott DeLong and Michelle Gifford from God's own Pickaway County. And good to see my friends here. And if we need any help to make sure we can get you there, let us know. Does it work? Tap it. Are we on? Maybe if we just bend the platform mic downwards, it might be just as good. There we go. That might be best for us. No problem. It comes out of my paycheck, Marie. All right. Let's do. Let's do 6 minutes together if we could. Is that all right?
Tell me to vital the villa Winky's memo, sweetie, a member of the House Finance Committee. My name is Michelle Gifford, and I am proud to serve as a board member at the Pickaway County Board of Development Disabilities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today in support of House Bill 96. I decided it was important to testify because this is my life. The decisions you make directly affect my day-to-day experience, my independence, and my ability to give to my community. I want to make sure my voice and the voices of others like me are heard. I became a board member because I love all people, and I want to fight for what we need and want. People with disabilities knows what we need. We live the life every day, and our experience give the board a better understanding of what it's like to live in the world with a disability. Direct support professional plays a huge role in my life. They support my independence, allowing me to live my life without relying entirely on my family or my husband. For DSPs to continue doing this important work, they need to be paid enough to support their families. Self-pay is not just about wages. It's about respect and appreciation for the critical work they do. Over the past 2 years, since DSP's wages have increased, my life has improved a lot. My caregiver are available when I need them, which means I have more consistent and high quality support. That stability made a real difference in my life. I want to personally thank this committee for increasing the SP's wages in the last budget. When my caregiver feel good about their job, it's all respected for their work. It makes my life better and easier. I urge you to continue supporting the SPs in their budget so they can continue supporting me and others like me. Your decisions shape our lives. And we are counting on you to ensure that people with disabilities have the support they need to live independently and dignity. Thank you for your time and consider what you said.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Gifford. And it's great to see you again. I don't know if you would remember, but a couple years ago, I used to play in the Special Olympics community game, and I remember seeing you handling things on the sidelines and leading cheers, and it's great. We are all very blessed to have you here today. I've been here for 4.5 years, and you just gave some of the most powerful testimony that I've ever seen during my time here. We're all better off for you being here.
Glad
Thank you.
to be here.
I don't think I can say it better to you, but I'll just highlight it. You just said over the past 2 years, since DSP wages have increased, your life has improved a lot. More caregivers are available. That stability makes a big difference in my life. I couldn't say it any better, and I appreciate you being here to advocate today. Are there any questions from the committee?
Chairman.
Rep. Troy.
And thank you, Ms. Gifford, for your testimony. I just want to salute either the Board of Pickaway County Commissioners or the probate judge, whoever had the wisdom to put you on the Board of Developmental Disabilities in your county, because I was always a believer that, boy, you know, if we can put people who understand the system, use the system in these decision-making places, do there. And thank you for your comments. I think it's one of the most important things we did in the budget we passed 2 years ago was getting those direct service provider rates up. up because that was a long overdue need, and I agree with you. We need to continue to enhance that to make life better for you. Thank you.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
Mrs. Gifford, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your testimony. We'll let you go have fun the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right.
And esteemed members of the committee, I'm Scott DeLong, CEO of a provider in Champaign County, CRSI. We provide services in over 21 counties at this time. I'm here to express our gratitude for the investment made, as Michelle said better than I can say, in the DSP wages and support in the past state operating budget, and to provide support for another rate increase. Direct support wages is imperative to the success of the individuals that we serve, and not just in the service themselves, but in continuity of care and continued services. Your commitment to those vital services provided by those workers has yielded tangible and positive outcomes. We are a dedicated provider of services that serves over 400 individuals in those 21 counties. We've built a compassionate and skilled team of over 700 employees who are passionate about supporting their community and those individuals. CRSI has provided services to Ohioans with developmental disabilities for almost 50 years. As the CEO, it's my job to ensure that CRSI can continue to provide our vital services today, tomorrow, and in the future. Your attention to the needs of DSPs has led to the meaningful and improvements in our workforce and the quality of care we provide to individuals with developmental disabilities across Ohio. Some of the key successes since that budget passage, for the first time since 2015, our overtime rate has decreased below 17%. This is a significant improvement, demonstrating our ability to better manage staffing levels and improve the work-life balance for those individuals providing that service. Growth in DSP staff over the past year, we have increased our DSP staff by 55 individuals, which is the first time since 2012 that we have surpassed those that have terminated or left the industry. This increase is a direct result of the previous wage enhancements, making the profession more attractive to potential employees and helping to reduce the strain on the current workforce. Turnover. For the past 2 years, we have seen a decline in turnover rates. While the national average turnover rate for DSPs remains alarmingly high, we have worked hard to improve our retention, but continued support will be key to maintaining and improving this situation. And starting wages. The key factor here, starting wages of pay increased by over 32% for our DSPs. This has been a critical factor in attracting new talent and to the ability to ensure that those that are with us stay with us moving forward. While we are grateful for the investments you've already made, there is still significant work to be done to ensure we can continue to provide quality care for those Ohioans with developmental disabilities. Further increase the funding to the Department of Developmental Disabilities to support reimbursement rates to help us build on this momentum and address the following critical needs. Reducing burnout and improving retention. While turnover has decreased, it remains a challenge. A rate increase will allow us to continue offering competitive wages that help retain our skilled staff and reduce burnout. Attracting new talent. Despite recent wage increases, we continue to face a shortage of qualified DSPs, and a rate increase would allow us to compete for new talent in a competitive job market. We are committed to ensuring that the Ohioans with disabilities receive the highest quality of care and support, but to achieve this, we need a workforce that is well compensated, well trained, and well supported. The best way to ensure that we can continue to meet these needs to serve those individuals with developmental disabilities is by continuing to invest in the workforce that supports them. Our ask is 3.4% or 65 cents per hour for DSPs year one, and 2.3% or 45 cents per hour in year two. So in conclusion, I respectfully urge the committee to approve a funding increase to the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the rates for services that providers can use to offer wage increases to DSPs in Ohio. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next witness will be Pamela Lindman from Child Focus. And just a couple housekeeping things. We've got a few witnesses from yesterday that will be next. We've got next up will be Renee Coley, then Kelly Evans, and Troy McIntosh. You may begin.
Chairman Stewart, Vice Chair Davia, and members of the House Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Pamela Lindeman. I am the president and CEO of Child Focus out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been there for 32 years, and I've seen a lot of great things. So Child Focus is a fairly large nonprofit organization. Quite frankly, we're a lifeline to the individuals in the regions we serve. Annually, about 20,000 individuals in central and southern Ohio across 22 counties. We develop thriving kids, strong families, and successful adults. We've been in operation since 1977, and we primarily administered two really critical importance: comprehensive early learning services, and most importantly, comprehensive behavioral health care for children, adolescents, and adults. There is a very, very great need in the communities we serve, particularly in the under-resourced Appalachian region of Southern Ohio. There's a need for programs to help families who are struggling. Child Focus impacts the lives of those we serve by responding to a variety of things: 2 a.m. crisis hotline calls, mobile crisis runs, providing high-quality child care. Through our Head Start programmings, we support and do ride-alongs with law enforcement for mobile crisis and MRSS, provide just-in-time emergency mental health treatment to individuals on the brink of suicide. And our continued work is reliant on having adequate resources to maintain these programs and expand to serve more families. We are grateful to the Ohio General Assembly for appropriating $500,000 in fiscal years 24 and 25 through a TANF block grant earmark, and $500,000 general revenue fund earmark in fiscal years 24 and 25 through the Department of Job and Family Services. The federal state appropriated dollars went to Child Focus, what we call our Strong Families program, and believe me, it's been a game changer. With the help of these appropriations, Child Focus in the last budget cycle served 815 families. That's 1,636 children and 1,137 caregivers in Claremont, Brown, Adams, Highland, and Hamilton counties. This program is a catalyst, it's upstream, and a catalyst for keeping families together, preventing children from entering the child welfare system, making sure that families are able to achieve economic mobility and move forward away from dependence on government assistance and government programs. We're super proud of the work that we've done. TANF has allowed us to serve families who need help before their children are in CPS custody or before the family is homeless. So we've now wrapped up our 4th year of programming, and again, serving 815 families in the last budget cycle. The wait list continues to grow. It's a highly, highly sought after program and service. So I'm asking this committee to support an amendment to House Bill 96 that we've been working with Representative Gene Schmidt that would appropriate $1 million in each fiscal year through the TANF block grant earmark and $1 million in GRF each fiscal year through ODJFS. These appropriations would allow Child Focus to increase the number of families served in our Strong Families program.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions for the committee? Representative Schmidt.
Thank you very much. And I have witnessed you grow throughout the years and the multiple services that you do. Can you give us an example of a success story through your program?
Yes, through Chairman Stewart to Representative Schmidt, I can give you a fantastic story that's really hot off the press. This one will probably rip at your heartstrings. We had a family that came to us, a family of 7, ended up being referred by one of the juvenile court magistrates in Claremont County. This particular family got involved with juvenile court because one of the older youth, so this is a family of 7, 5 children, mom and dad. One of the older youth in the family ended up involved in the juvenile justice system And then through that discovery, they referred them to the Strong Families Program. And what we learned and what we found out was this family of 7 were surviving on a household income of $38,000 a year. They also were living in a camper, and I'm not talking about a trailer or a double wide. I'm talking literally a camper that one would, have a trailer hitch and pull behind them. 7 individuals living in this. And because they had no property, they were literally migrating from campground to campground every 2 weeks, because you cannot live at a campsite. And so this was an incredibly challenging family, but what was so amazing is their resilience. They were so resilient. They had gutted the inside of the camper to create more living space for, bedding and places for people to sleep. And so they were resilient and smart in that, they made sure that each 2 weeks that they migrated to a new campground, that they strategically sought out ones where there was actual plumbing, they could take showers, they were homeschooling their kids. Long story short, we worked with this family for about 9 months through the Strong Families Program, and we assisted them in a variety of ways. One, through our job training program, the dad was able to work with our job navigator, improve his employability skills, and I'm happy to say that he was able to land a new job, doubled his income. We assisted the family with TANF funds and GRF funds to help them pay down credit card debt, got their kids enrolled in school, and worked with a local realtor. So once they paid down their debt, they actually qualified for a traditional mortgage, and for the first time in their adult married life have their own home and their kids are back in school. It's an incredible story.
Wonderful. Other questions? Thank you for your testimony. Our next witness will be Renee Coley.
Thank you, Chair Stewart and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of the Ohio Computer Science Advocacy Coalition's budget priorities. 1, adopting a computer science graduation requirement. 2, appropriating $300,000 for our CS district playbook. 3, adding an extension of the computer science teacher licensure waiver to the budget. And 4, continuing funding for Teach CS. I will focus my testimony on the 4th request. I stand before you today not just for the students of Ohio, but because of them. As a 33-year veteran of the public school classroom, I never imagined I would be a computer science teacher. My passion was language arts until 9 years ago, when a day called Hour of Code changed the course of my career. This experience was an instant hit with my 6th graders. They were engaged and eager to keep learning. Soon they were asking to stay in for recess to do code, and it was then that I realized that this content was different. The Teach CS program has been instrumental in changing CS education, but its success hinges on continued funding. Our teachers are our #1 resource in expanding computer science education, and without proper training and support, we cannot equip students with the skills they need now for the future. Teach CS funding has significantly increased access to computer science education, especially in underserved and rural communities. Without continued investment, we risk leaving thousands of students without opportunities to learn these essential skills. This funding is directly responsible for training educators through professional learning and licensure programs. Many of these teachers would not have had the chance to bring computer science into their classrooms without this support. Cutting funding now would mean losing momentum and reducing the number of qualified teachers available to expand CS education. The program is building long-term capacity in schools by ensuring teachers have the knowledge, skills, and resource to sustain computer science programs. Without ongoing investment, schools risk losing the ability to maintain and grow their CS offerings. Expanding computer science education is critical to Ohio's workforce goals, providing students with essential computational thinking and problem-solving skills. If we fail to continue funding Teach CS, we risk leaving our students unprepared for the job market and widening the gap between those who have access to these opportunities and those who do not. The impact of Teach CS is undeniable. The Ohio STEM Learning Network, only 1 out of 17 Teach CS providers, had the following impact. In the 24-25 school year, 70 educators in 63 schools are reaching 62,681 students. For the 2025-26 year, the exam prep program alone includes 60 educators in 58 schools, impacting approximately 17,500 students. We expect 150 educators across multiple programs, including a new professional learning pilot in Gallia County. Teachers in Northwest and Southeast Ohio have joined our CS programs in significant numbers, demonstrating strong interest and need in rural areas. Teach CS has helped grow a community of CS educators who now mentor others, ensuring sustainable progress. I've seen firsthand how computer science can change lives of students and get them excited about their future, and I urge you to support this critical initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Coley. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And your patience.
Oh,
Next witness will be Kelly Evans. Thank you. May begin.
Thank you, Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, and Ranking Member Sweeney, and members of the House Finance Committee. Thank you for accepting testimony on House Bill 96. My name is Kelly Geyer Evans, and I'm here on behalf of the Computer Science Education Advocacy Coalition, and I have the honor of working as the director of the Ohio STEM Learning Network. It's a public-private partnership between the state of Ohio and Battelle. At Battelle, we conduct science and create technologies across many fields, including national security, health, agriculture, and energy. And as of yesterday morning, when I did a quick search, I know that Battelle is hiring currently for things like a lead machine learning scientist, computational protein biochemist, cyber research engineers, vulnerability researchers, data scientists. That's just to name a few. But all these positions share a common need, a need for a computational, educated workforce. To maintain America's technological leadership and to ensure Ohio students are prepared for the high-wage, high-demand careers here at home, we have to equip them with these skills. In addition to supporting the governor's proposed continuation of $4 million annually for the Teach Computer Science program, we also urge you to consider 3 amendments as highlighted in my written testimony. For time's sake, I'm only going to focus on the need for the Computer Science District Playbook and the need to extend the Computer Science Teacher Licensure Waiver. As we work to ensure that our teachers have the knowledge to expand computer science education, we also know that school districts lack a roadmap to efficiently make these changes. This creates unnecessary costs, delays, and inconsistent outcomes. I've seen firsthand that successful implementation requires addressing the system-level challenges. School leaders tell us that competing priorities make it difficult to launch effective computer science programs, despite strong interest from our parents, our students, and our local industries and employers. The Computer Science District Playbook would provide a fiscally responsible solution to these challenges. The playbook proposes selecting a diverse set of school districts representing rural, urban, and suburban communities across Ohio to work through those shared challenges. The approach recognizes that local districts need strategies that respect their unique circumstances and resources. These districts could collaborate to develop practical, field-tested approaches to expand computer science and create a resulting playbook that could provide all districts with guidance, including along things like course progressions, efficient staffing and scheduling practices that maximize our existing resources, identifying what the necessary technical assets are, software, as well as creating clear pathways aligned with the workforce and local industry needs. This approach leverages local innovation and creates a comprehensive Ohio-specific guidebook available to all of our districts. We're also asking for an amendment to extend the computer science teacher licensure waiver through 2032. The licensure waiver has been renewed for a 2-year period in each of the last few biennium budgets, and we're hoping you will once again support this renewal. We're asking for this extension for 2 reasons. First, it allows teachers like Renee, who hold a teaching license, to teach computer science with appropriate professional learning while they work towards their CS licensure. It takes time. Second, by extending through 2032, it provides school districts with additional stability as they're creating those system-wide plans to upskill their teaching staff and expand computer science programming. By supporting these amendments, you'll help ensure that Ohio students in every community, from our smallest rural towns to our largest urban centers, have access to the skills they need for high-paying jobs while providing Ohio businesses with the skilled workforce they need to compete and grow. Thank you for your commitment to Ohio students and our economic future, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Rep. Pickley Antonio.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick clarification related to the teacher licensure piece. So the licensure waiver, my understanding is it is for already licensed teachers. It's a waiver so that they can teach CS classes working on that license. It doesn't give somebody who is not already a licensed teacher the ability to teach those classes, correct?
Through the chair to the representative, that's absolutely correct. Someone has to have an existing teaching license, and then it allows a waiver from having the additional computer science piece while they're working towards that computer science additional license.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness will be, actually, I misspoke earlier. We're going to go Julia Nguyen, then Troy McIntosh, then we'll have Tom Radican.
Thank you so much, Chair Stewart, members of the committee. My name is Julia Nguyen, and I manage advocacy in Ohio for Code.org, a national nonprofit focused on expanding access to computer science education for every student. We are also a member of the Ohio Computer Science Advocacy Coalition, here to support the 4 amendments that you just heard Renee and Kelly talk about. I'm going to focus my testimony on the amendment to require computer science for graduation, which was a consensus recommendation from the 2022 State Committee on Computer Science. Technology and computing touches every aspect of our lives. Today, learning about the internet, algorithms, data analysis, and computational thinking is just as important to understanding our world as civics or algebra. But currently, we require no foundational knowledge of these concepts. This presents a serious gap, a gap of skills that are becoming increasingly relevant and are key to keeping Ohio competitive as a hub for innovation and investment. Updating Ohio graduation requirements to include computer science will ensure students gain the digital knowledge they need to be successful in our world today. Ohio's workforce is urgently demanding these skills. Over 140 Ohio CEOs have signed a letter urging policymakers to prioritize computer science. They cite its critical value in all modern industries, from agriculture to manufacturing to finance, not just tech. The CEOs note that the prevalence of AI makes learning computer science even more relevant. Over a quarter of current jobs require highly digital skills, and 2/3 of the 15 fastest growing jobs are computer science or AI related. This subject is essential for career readiness in an AI-driven economy. But computer science is good for students too. Studies have shown that students who take computer science perform better on math and reading assessments, excel at problem solving, and are more likely to enroll in higher education. Initial research also shows being exposed to computer science raises students' earnings and likelihood of being employed at age 24. Nearly a dozen states across the country, including Ohio's neighbor, Indiana, have realized these benefits and enacted computer science requirements. Even globally, countries with some of the highest GDPs per capita, like China and Japan, who are also leaders on technology, require computer science for all K-12 students. This subject is key to Ohio's continued competitiveness in the global economy. There is significant flexibility built into the amendment language that enables schools to implement the requirement with fidelity. The amendment requires 1 unit of computer science taken in any of grades 8 through 12, starting with the 2032 graduating seniors. The language provides a 7-year runway that allows plenty of planning time for schools, schedule flexibility by allowing the course to be taken as a math, science, foreign language, or elective, fitting it into existing requirements as much as possible. the ability for schools to offer computer science virtually if needed, or through a partnership with an ESC, and explicit language allowing CCP courses and programs provided by community colleges to count towards the requirement. Ohio has 61% of high schools already offering computer science, and states with lower percentages have passed graduation requirements and were able to obtain sufficient teacher capacity to implement them. Nevada had only 57% of schools offering the subject when its requirement was passed, and within 2 years it had 83% offering the course. A similar increase in 2 years of 23% was seen in South Carolina. The 2022 report of the State Committee on Computer Science also pointed out that the most challenging barriers to CS expansion, including the shortage of teachers, may be impossible to remedy without a graduation requirement, as high school hiring practices tend to closely follow state requirements. Computer science opens doors of opportunity for students, as you heard Renee mention in her testimony. Passing this policy will not only assure Ohio remains economically competitive, but will ensure every student, regardless of background, gains the digital skills necessary to be prepared for success. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we appreciate your time. Our next witness will be Troy McIntosh.
Good afternoon, Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, Ranking Member Sweeney, and members of the House Finance Committee. My name is Troy McIntosh. I serve as the Executive Director of the Ohio Christian Education Network, representing 198 evangelical and Catholic schools and 55,000 students across the state. Briefly, our membership believes there are several ways to take what the General Assembly has begun in the area of school choice and, in conjunction with the budget proposed by the governor, improve it with a few modifications. We believe these amendments to be submitted will improve the educational landscape for all students and continue to expand the opportunities families have been granted and increase accountability on providers. The first three recommendations would provide the type of incremental expansion of school choice opportunities that the General Assembly has shown that they prefer to take. First, we recommend that the current homeschool tax credit of $250 per family be adjusted to provide $250 of credit per student. Even at this rate, the cost to the state of a homeschool student is a fraction, perhaps under 10% of what it would cost if these students were to enroll in their local public school. Incentivizing families to consider homeschooling is a financial and educational win for the state, particularly because homeschool students consistently outperform those attending a local school, public or private. A recent academic analysis of the CLT exam showed that homeschooled students outperformed students in every other educational model. Professor Lisa Treleaven wrote, "This is consistent with prior research findings of superior academic performances of homeschool students as compared to other school types." Second, we encourage the House to take up the provisions of SB 68, sponsored by Senator Romanchuk. This bill would provide an educational savings account program for students attending a non-chartered school. The ESA would be valued at just 90% of an EdChoice scholarship. Research has shown that school choice programs are most effective when there are more schooling options available to students. Ohio is unique with its chartered, non-chartered structure, so we believe that both should be open to students seeking the best opportunity for their learning. Third, we suggest that expanding the SGO tax credit from $750 for individuals and $1,500 for couples be increased to $1,500 and $3,000. Many states with ESA programs have higher credit limits than Ohio, and many offer corporate credits. This increase would bring Ohio more in line with other states and help middle-income families in particular with the tuition differential many face when enrolling at an EdChoice provider school. The final suggestions are rather simple and cost-free. First, one of the barriers to a growing school choice program is the physical plant limitations for charter and private schools. To help private schools with physical plant expansion, we request that chartered non-public schools be given the same priority status as high-performing community schools, STEM schools, and boarding schools for purchasing or leasing unused public school facilities. These facilities are community assets that were funded with the intention of providing for the education of the community's children. And chartered non-publics make such provisions. We've had at least one chartered non-public school in our membership be turned down from purchasing such unused facilities. Finally, we ask the General Assembly add a prohibition to CBD stores from operating within 500 feet of a school building, placing it in the same category as liquor stores and dispensaries. The FDA has issued a warning against people driving after consuming CBD projects, and the risk of having these stores in the immediate vicinity of a school is obvious. We have at least one member school with a CBD store operating directly across the street from its school building.
Thank you, sir, for your
Thank you.
testimony. Questions from the committee? Representative Hoops.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. One of the issues that keeps coming up, and I bring it up, is transportation. You know, with the public schools, because that seems to be I guess a burden sometime because of the cost. And then I also found out that they get fined because if they don't pick up a student at a certain time and drop that student off to wherever, they get fined. And I guess what are your thoughts on that? What do we need to do so that everybody's treated fairly? Because our main goal is to get that student to wherever the student needs to be on time.
Yeah, through the chair to Representative Hoops. That's a really good question that was outside of the scope of my testimony, but it is an issue that I believe ought to be addressed, because what we saw in the past school year were numerous districts throughout the state, mostly larger urban districts, but not exclusively large urban districts, take what we would perceive as an extremely generous, maybe even abusive interpretation of the ability to declare transportation impractical. And so we had large number of students with very little warning that were attending our schools. I know that community schools experienced the same thing, be told they would no longer be granted transportation, even though they were within the 30-minute radius that the law requires. So we believe that the law's assumption is that those students will be transported, and the state will pay the local district a per-student rate to provide that transportation. That should be the default assumption. What was happening is we saw districts, some of them, not all, some flip that and start to say, we're only going to provide transportation in limited circumstances, and we're going to declare everybody else impractical. And so, I mean, and I understand there are reasons to do that. I think what you'll hear some testimony later from some of my colleagues will be more specific to that point, with some suggestions on how we think we can address that. Because we do believe that those students who live within the 30-mile radius, 30-minute radius, ought to, by default, receive transportation, except in the most extreme cases.
Follow up.
So I guess, thank you, Mr. Chairman, you feel you should have no obligation to help pay for the transportation? Is that what you're saying? You know, as a private or a private school or a charter school?
So through the representative,
has that ever been an option to think about that? Hey, maybe we can chip in to help with the transportation.
So through the representative, through the chair to the representative, there are many private schools that, at their own expense, provide transportation to students. I guess my point would be, those families are paying the same taxes to the state that a student who enrolls in a public school does, and the public school families aren't chipping in to pay for their transportation. So we believe the same ought to be applied to students, whether they're attending a public school or a chartered non-public school, that all of them are taxpayers and that all of them ought have a right to receive free transportation to their school.
Other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Need a follow-up, Jim?
I guess, you know, as we continue to put more, thank you, Mr. Chairman, as we continue to put more, you know, tax dollars into the schools, I guess I'm thinking, just like we've put it into the public schools, I mean, at the end, it's tax dollars, whether it's people's dollars, whether it's going to come locally or from the state. And I guess it's something I think we need to look at, you know, just to make sure, again, that child gets to where they need to go on time and in a safe manner. So I think it's something we need to look at.
Yeah, and through the chair to Rep. Hoops. Again, if a student attends a public school, then the tax dollars that they have contributed to the state and to the locality pays for their transportation. Our position is that simply because they choose a chartered non-public school, they're still paying the same taxes to both localities and to the state. They ought to receive the same transportation services that if they had enrolled in a public school.
Other questions? Rep. Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. You know, and I attended, Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school, Catholic college. Never got any taxpayer support for any of that. I mean, and you know, we do have a responsibility under the Constitution to provide for a thorough program of public education. But you know, between the vouchers and now you're recommending in your testimony to take this tax credit, which I think is extremely generous, of $750 individual or $1,500 for a couple. This is not a tax exemption. This is a tax credit, and doubling that. I mean, you know, we're running into a situation here where, you know, we're unable to properly fund, I think, the 90% of the folks that go through public education, and you're basically saying, no, we're entitled to have free bus transportation, we're entitled to have an additional tax credit, we're entitled to have all this. I mean, you know, at some point, I mean, this is just not sustainable.
Through the
Is there a
chair
is there a
to
question?
Representative
Yeah.
Troy, I'm not sure if there was a question in there or not, but my response to that would be, even if you take the Ed Choice program, the transportation program, and the SGO program, a student attending a chartered non-public school is still doing so at a fraction of the cost to the state and to the locality that if they had attended a public school. So the idea that private school students, chartered non-public school students, are being funded at a higher rate, I would dispute. That's not the case.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Next witness will be Tom Radican. You may begin, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 96. I'm Tom Radican, an Associate Director with the Catholic Conference of Ohio, the official voice of the Catholic Church on public policy matters. We have 367 Catholic schools and approximately 113,000 students, or approximately 63% of all chartered non-public K-12 students in Ohio. And I'd like to share some good news. I know you're facing many challenges with the education budgets, and I've heard some of the recent questions. But I'd like to begin by thanking Governor DeWine for all of his thoughtful concern and ongoing support of our parents as the primary educators of their children, and also to thank you and all of the legislators who have supported school choice options for families in Ohio, most particularly the Catholic school families. So again, the good news is across the state, K-12 chartered school enrollment is up over 6% in the last 2 years, 6%. For us, many families are choosing Catholic schools for the first time across the state, both in urban, suburban, and rural areas. And there's some challenges in all of those areas. I'll talk about those briefly in a minute. For the Catholic schools, we've seen a 3% total rise in enrollment over the last 2 years. We had been looking at a steady but slight decline, and now we're seeing an increase in the last 2 years, due largely in part, I think, to the Ed Choice expansion. So families continue to choose Catholic schools for any combination of reasons: spiritual formation, strong academics, smaller class sizes, safe environment, or all of the above. I'd like to share with you a significant statistic here. Over the past 9 years, the number of African American students in our schools have increased both in total numbers and as a percentage of our student population, rising from 10% in 2015 to now we're at 14% of our students are African American. It's about the same as the public schools. The number of Hispanic identifying students has nearly doubled over that same period and now constitutes about 9% of our students, greater by a significant number than the Hispanic students in the public schools. In addition, our efforts to serve students with special needs has significantly improved. And we all know special needs services are very costly. This year, we have more than 4,000 students receiving a John Peterson Special Needs Scholarship. That's double the number of students we had back in 2014. And the number of autism scholarships has also doubled in our schools, which is challenging to provide those services, but we've doubled the number of kids. So while we're blessed with more families and students, we're also seeing many schools with waiting lists. For example, in Cleveland, we have about 60% of the schools have a waiting list, up significantly, more than double from pre-COVID. Same in Columbus and the Cincinnati Archdiocese, 60% of their schools have waiting lists. Across the state, many Catholic schools are raising money for expansions on existing facilities, and some are bravely seeking support for brand new schools, new construction. So Catholic schools will always try to enroll families of every financial background or specialized need. That is our mission. And we'll continue to reach out particularly to students in disadvantaged areas. I've talked to a number of you on this committee. I know you share our concerns and interests. So again, we are grateful, very grateful to EdChoice options and special needs scholarships. But as you look for ways to assist students and families from economically disadvantaged parts of the state, I'd like to ask you to consider extending the Disadvantaged Pupil Impact Aid program to the charter non-public schools, and in particular to our Catholic schools. It's focused in 3 areas: intensive reading services and safety concerns, of which I think we would be more than happy to be a participant in any of that if you choose to extend it to the charter non-public schools. Again, it would be mostly in the inner cities and in our underprivileged rural areas.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, sir, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next witness will be Drew Ferguson. And on deck, we will have William Murdoch from Morpsey, Jason Rather, and Tony Fiore. Mr. Ferguson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Stewart, Vice Chairman Davila, and members of the Ohio Finance Committee. I stand before you today advocating for the future of Ohio's young people through our aerospace and maritime industries. Argonaut was founded in 2010 as a combined business education nonprofit that incorporates project-based learning and real-life experiences for high school-aged youth in the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. Argonaut designed, launched, and jointly operates a public high school rooted in local industry and history. The Davis Aerospace and Maritime High School is a public-private partnership between Argonaut and the Cleveland Metropolitan School District that builds upon the legacy of Cleveland alumnus and Tuskegee Airman General Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. The Cleveland Metropolitan School District provides the core content of the high school experience, ensuring students meet the requirements for high school graduation. Argonaut provides hands-on engagement in the industry sectors through expanded learning programming, paid internships and work experience, teacher-supported project-based learning, and works to both develop and support career technical education credentialing and industry-specific licensing and certification. Graduates of Davis A&M will serve a critical role in Ohio's continued strength and growth in the aerospace and maritime sector. Argonaut funding comes from a balance of industry support, philanthropy, grants, and contract services. All Davis students are introduced to the aerospace and maritime industries through immersive in-school and out-of-school programs. Our students are STEM educated, technically prepared, and often certificated for the career path in which their passion lies. They earn paid internships where they hone their skills and establish networks. Students graduate ready to fulfill the high-demand, high-paying jobs in Ohio's aerospace and maritime sectors. All Davis students graduate career-ready, with most college-ready as well. The passion and skills developed at Davis also prove highly beneficial for the increasing number of students who choose to serve our country through military service. Regardless of our students' post-secondary aspirations,
Argonaut believes that all career paths in the aerospace and maritime industries build from a technical education foundation. We have a moral and economic obligation to ensure that our young people have access to the high-quality education that equips them with the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed in these fields. That's why Argonaut is requesting funding in the amount of $1 million over the biennium to support the continued growth of our specialized programs at the Davis Aerospace and Maritime High School. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Questions from the committee? We'll start with Vice Chair Davila.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again. I think my last visit was right before I left for the
Yep.
Naval War College in the summer of 22.
Correct.
Was curious if you could give us a little more information on the intended receipt of the earmark that you're looking for here. I know at the time that I visited, you were receiving, I think, a vessel from the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis for refitting and for training, and that you'd done a lot more on the aeronautical side than the maritime side, but maybe just a little bit more color commentary for the committee on how the dollars might be spent.
Excellent, thank you. As was just mentioned, we also have a waiting list at our school. As a public high school, it is an open enrollment school district where we have students coming from as far away as Ashtabula or Bay Village to attend this public school. Our funding formula is very much about sustaining and slow growth, but with more than 100 kids on this waiting list, we're asking for a one-time investment to allow us to build over the next 2 years, increasing the capacity by about 25%. In this time, we're also looking to upgrade facilities and tooling to allow us to keep pace with technologies and changing industry needs.
Other questions?
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Seeing none, sir, thank you. Our next witness will be William Murdoch.
Thank you, Chair Stewart. I am not William Murdoch. I am Joe Garrity. I am the Senior Director of Government Affairs. Unfortunately, Mr. Murdoch had to go to a board meeting.
I thought I was losing my mind for a moment, so, all right.
Well, Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, members of the House Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to allow me to testify on the state operating budget today. MORPC represents 90 distinct local governments and partner organizations across a 15-county region encompassing urban, suburban, and rural communities alike. We like to say we're at the intersection of jobs and transportation. Today, I want to focus on two critical opportunities that will shape Ohio's future for generations to come. That is expanding passenger rail service and equipping communities with the tools to expand housing supply. Ohio has a historic opportunity today to expand passenger rail service. Just imagine being able to take a train to a Bengals game or a Browns game. I don't know if you want to right now with the free agency issues. You could also travel to South Bend to watch the Ohio State Buckeyes play the Fighting Irish. No traffic. You can also think about the business opportunities, being able to work on your laptop on the way to a hearing at the State House. Also, consider those who cannot drive or who don't like to fly. Passenger rail gives them a reliable and safe option to travel across our great state. This proposal includes 4 key corridors in Ohio that have been approved by the Federal Rail Administration, including the 3C and D line, which connects Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati, and Midwest Connect, connecting Chicago, Lima, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. These routes will connect our communities, rural and urban alike, while leveraging existing infrastructure and enhancing our freight and logistics sector. The business community in Ohio is a crucial partner, and they are unmistakably been a partner in regards to this real potential of passenger rail. All Aboard Ohio estimates that the 3CD corridor alone could generate up to $47 million in annual GDP and create as many as 1,200 jobs. Nationally, every dollar invested in rail returns $4 in economic benefits. That's why business leaders from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the Columbus Partnership, and regional chambers across the state are standing with us. And this opportunity isn't just for Ohio's largest cities. Cities like Lima, Springfield, Kenton, and Newark are already planning for the possibilities of passenger rail. Some Central Ohio communities have already verbally committed $300,000 in matching fund. To move forward, we're asking you to support a $2 million general revenue appropriation offered by Representative Matthews. Amendment number 1515 to provide local matching funds for service for step 2 of the Service Development Plan study. This investment would unlock federal dollars and advance us to the next stage of development. We also support a separate amendment from Representative Blaisdell, Amendment 1377, that would appropriate $3 million in general revenue fund over the biennium to establish the Passenger Rail Office at the Ohio Rail Development Commission. This office would also allow the state to more effectively and thoroughly study the opportunity of passenger rail in the state of Ohio. Lastly, we also want to talk about housing today. In the last General Assembly, House Bill 315 provided $1.5 million for a new housing technical assistance grant, one of several recommendations from the Ohio Senate Select Committee on Housing. By funding a housing technical assistance program, communities and regional councils alike will have the tools they need to adjust local regulations and may slow down economic growth. Most importantly, this approach preserves local decision-making, allowing each community to adapt to economic conditions in ways that best suit their needs. We are requesting that the House Technical Assistance Program be funded at $1.5 million for fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, members of the House Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Representative Johnson.
Thank you for being here today. I've got a few questions. To say there's no traffic on today's passenger rail in America is not a true statement, because we share the rail with freight trains. Whenever the freight train comes, they get priorities most of the time. And I've sat on Amtrak quite a bit, because my wife and I, we like to go down to Greenbrier once a year, and we ride the train from South Portsmouth over to the Greenbrier. I've also rode that train to Washington, D.C., and that was a 12-hour ride. So I'd hate to depend on my livelihood on Amtrak. So that's just it in a nutshell. We are light years behind the European nations, and they have rails that runs 189 miles an hour, and freight trains are not on their passenger train lines, and very efficient. And that is just the culture of that country. But switching the culture of our country over here is asking a lot of our people that we love our automobiles. And I'm not so sure if it's going to be a profitable venture or not, or just be something that we continuously feed. We just create another liability for us to feed. So with that, that's just my thoughts. No question.
Yeah. Other questions? Rep. Glassman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you speak to, this was extensively debated 15 years ago when I was on staff here. Could you speak more to why or how the passenger rail component of this is different now than it was 15 years ago, or what the opportunity is now?
Yeah, through the chair to the representative. First, public-private partnerships. In 2019, the business community was not behind passenger rail. Secondly, bipartisan support. When MORPC and the Ohio Rail Development Commission put together their applications, we had support from now Vice President J.D. Vance, former Senator Sherrod Brown. And then thirdly, there's a significantly better process that the Federal Rail Administration is conducting. This is simply a service development plan. There are several off-paths. This allows us the opportunity to plan for what's in the best interest of passenger rail and moving people across the strait, and enhancing freight rail as well. In addition, if I'm allowed to mention some of Representative Johnson's comments as well, indeed, there is traffic on rail. There's no question about that. I was referring to traffic in the automobile. Having said that, you brought up a great point, sir. What's unique is when we're looking at other states, there are great opportunities with Amtrak. There's also opportunities with Brightline. We were in Michigan driving to Chicago at speeds of 110 miles an hour. going into Chicago, passing traffic. In addition to that, in Florida, there is a Brightline East at speeds of 125 miles an hour. And I know Brightline West is currently working on connecting Las Vegas to Los Angeles in preparation for the Olympics.
Other questions? Follow up.
Thank you. Just brief follow-up, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your indulgence. So at this point, the question is, as I understood it, is if we have a seat at the table of this organizing process or not. And so if we're part of this compact and get to have a seat at the table, does that make us more likely to not have the train only come through Cleveland at 2 in the morning?
Yes, through the chair to the representative. So the Federal Rail, the corridor identification process is looking at two items. How can you enhance routes? So the route from Cleveland to Toledo to Chicago or to Detroit, how can you enhance or the service from, so there isn't service from Toledo to Detroit, how can they improve that service so there's more times that are more reasonable for people? There's also improving the Cardinal service that it goes and connects Cincinnati to Chicago. The 3C&D corridor does not exist, as well as the Chicago, Lima, Columbus to Pittsburgh route doesn't exist. But there's 68 different routes that the Federal Rail Administration is considering, and we have 4 routes in the state of Ohio that we're looking at conducting going into that next phase of the service development plan. MORPC has just completed the first phase, and we're looking and partnering with all of our local governments and communities to study the next phase.
Other questions? Thank you, sir, for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next up, we'll have Jason Rather. Or Rather, if I missed. Rather. Thank you, sir. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Chair Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, members of the House Finance Committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony or interested party testimony on House Bill 96. My name is Jason Rather, and I am the AVP of Innovation at Grange Insurance Company. Grange is an Ohio-based company proudly headquartered right here in Columbus. My role as the innovation leader is to develop new and exciting technologies for the company. I'm here today not to focus on insurance, but rather to share my passion for helping Ohioans learn how to drive in a safe manner. Technology can be utilized to assist Ohioans through 2 important phases of driver training. Those 2 phases are 50 hours of parent coaching and 8 hours of behind-the-wheel in-car evaluation. This technology would validate that the proper number of practice hours has been completed, provide guidance to develop safe driving skills, and evaluate the successful mastery of those driving skills. Rest assured, a licensed adult will always need to be in a car. For new technology to be successful, though, a change in Ohio law is necessary. In previous testimony to the House Public Safety Committee, Director Wilson at Public Safety stated the following: the cost and availability of driver education can be a barrier for many new teen drivers in Ohio, with courses ranging in cost from $300 to $800 and lengthy wait times for in-car training. Governor DeWine has challenged us to make driver's education more accessible by reducing these and other barriers. The potential benefits of new technology will help remedy these current problems set forth by Director Wilson. The new technology will be able to provide benefits such as enhanced safety and more affordable and accessible options for Ohio families. In terms of safety, technology will provide guidance on safest roads to travel so that Ohioans can gradually build their driving skills at their own pace. And in terms of affordability and accessibility, there's a potential for cost savings for families by using the technology application to complete their driver training coursework. Allowing a licensed driver to complete some of the in-car instruction will relieve some of the pressures associated with driver training, such as long wait times and even longer commutes to driving schools in some rural communities. Grange has been working with members of the Assembly on this issue, and to that end, we have prepared an amendment, number 0512 to House Bill 96, that will allow for innovation in Ohio and request the committee's support for this amendment. This amendment will not impact Ohio's budget as there is no appropriation connected to it. Given this is the Finance Committee, I just emphasize that once again, that this amendment will not impact the Ohio budget. In closing, I'd like to leave you with 3 important thoughts. 1, safety comes first. The amendment language requires that this technology be reviewed and approved by the Department of Public Safety prior to any use. Number 2, consumer choice is preserved. The amendment will provide new driver training options for Ohioans while keeping the traditional driver training available for all. And 3, jobs are protected. The technology serves as a complement to, not a replacement for, our valuable driving instructors in schools. Ohio was a national leader with the introduction of the graduated driver's license system back in 1998. Now we have the opportunity to lead again with a modernized driver training change in Ohio law. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Rep. John.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for being here. So how do you access this training? How do parents and families know about the training?
Yeah, through the chair to the representative, thank you for the question. What this technology would do is actually be a supplement or a complement to the existing driving requirements. So I mentioned earlier there's a requirement for 50 hours of parent practice and 8 hours of in-car training. What we're asking the committee to do is to allow the technology to come in and actually assist the parent and assist the driving schools there. So think about some apps that you may have on your phone already, right? There's apps that track speed, for an example, right? So you could use that as an aid or an assistant to both the parent and the driving schools. So sometimes kids don't follow their parents' advice, right? So if you had an app that was saying, hey, you're going a little too fast in these places, it's just added reinforcement to the instruction that they're getting. There's many other uses too that I could go to. Happy to give you some more details. But if I do take just a moment to kind of paint the macro picture that's happening in the driving school space today, as you heard with my comments from Director Wilson, there's access and affordability, availability challenges for what we call the youthful drivers, the 16 and 17-year-olds. You've also heard Governor DeWine talk about the need to address some of what I would call the loophole in the older 18-plus drivers. So the 18-plus drivers today, if you're not aware, that they're not subject to any of the driving requirements that are laid out in the 16 and 17-year-olds. Now that's important because when you look at what's happening at the 18-year-old level, there's a trend to move from the youthful training. They're just going to wait till 18 where they have no training on there right now. Those numbers are moving upwards about 40%. And so that's becoming an issue because we know those drivers at 18 that wait to 18 and skip the training are more likely to have an accident. And there's a bunch of studies out there in that respect. But when you think about the whole ecosystem there, if you solve the adult piece, that's going to put more pressure back on the driving schools because all of that 40% of those drivers are now going to come back into the system.
Follow up?
Just thinking about the overall technology can aid that.
Rep. Abrams.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here. Obviously, you came before public safety, and public safety members, a lot of our members are former police, and we had a little trouble with this amendment, as you remember. And I guess just refreshing your memory, do you remember when I talked about the speed apps are not accurate, because I have one on my phone, that my family, we all partake in this, and I test it every week. And so I guess my question is, nothing beats the in-person classroom time. I made both of my sons sit in the driver's ed. We had no problem enrolling in our local driving school on the west side. No problem at all. They got right in, they took their class, they did the actual in-person driving. So my fear with this, I guess a statement, Chair, for the record is, look, if you give a training right now to everybody in this classroom on a computer versus sitting there with an instructor, people are just going to swipe right through, check the boxes, and move on. And I'm afraid that we're going to have people that shouldn't be even driving because they have no idea what the rules of the road are and they haven't learned properly. That's my concern. Plus, the governor's budget has money in there for high schools standing up their own programs, helping people afford driver's ed. So thank you, Chairman.
Other questions? Tom Young.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming today to talk about your side of the story, correct? There's actually a program that's been introduced and it's been tried by the ESC in Montgomery County and quite successful, and it's called Drive Smart. And the people that work on this, the positions are set up in the schools for trained trainers to pick up students, drop them off. We did a trial and funded in the last General Assembly, and it's been highly successful. It's not free. The students have to master the driving course and testing. And what in essence happens is that right now, it costs somewhere between $800 and $1,000 at the driving schools. And there's probably a 1.5, 2 year wait. But this program is cost effective. The students still have to pay half of the average cost. And there's funding, there's an attribute attached to it that helps pay for those that cannot. But our hope is that that will go into the budget. We can do the entire state for 25% of what the governor has allotted, maybe 25, 30% of what the governor has allotted, even though that you can integrate both programs together, but it's highly successful. And we're hoping to expand that into 6 counties, and then in the second part of the biennium, see how that goes and then spread it around the state. But it's very efficient, it has worked very, very well, and the same standards that are required to teach a class or a driver's class by the private companies are adhered to in this with all the training. Have you ever heard of Drive Smart before?
I have. Yes, I have.
Okay. And your feeling?
Through the chair to the representative, I think all of these different options are good, right? And we're here today really to ask for the approval of another option, that different students learn through different techniques and different approaches there. And so whether it's in the school or in a driving program or with some assistance from technology, we think that we have a role to play. And even in the situation that you mentioned and the approach there, I think technology may actually be an assistance to that sort of program as well. You just look around that technology is aiding in many things. This is an area that I think could be a win-win for everyone involved. And when you think about opportunities in this sort of environment, and you can come up with a win-win for all the parties, those situations don't really come around very often.
Other questions? Thank you, sir, for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Our next witnesses are going to be Tony Fiore, Bob Savage, Robert Keenley, and Tara Stacy in that order. So if Tony Fiore is here, there he is. Welcome, sir. You may begin.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart, Vice Chair Davila, and members of the House Finance Committee. My name is Tony Fiore, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Ohio Aviation Association. It represents the 104 public-owned, public-use airports throughout Ohio and the numerous businesses that use and rely on those airports. Airports' economic impact in the state is between $15 and $30 billion. It employs over 119,000 employees and has a development or construction Ohio airports need your help. They have between $20 and $25 million worth of requests that go to the Office of Aviation at ODOT every year, where we have $10 million that are put into this fund, which we appreciate, and we are here to support that continued effort in this budget. But they So, for example, $20 million could turn into $400 million in these construction projects around the state, but we need your help for more funds going into the Office of Aviation's the Office of Aviation at ODOT and their airport improvement program. On the second page of my testimony, I kind of summarize what was in the transportation budget, what's in the operating budget, so you can see that. And the key point here that we're asking for is under federal law, state or local aviation fuel taxes need to go into airport improvement projects. It's considered revenue, and by FAA definition, should be going back into those. We've never had, like other states, a process of tracking and reporting that. We thank you for adding that language into the transportation budget, but I'm here to tell you that I believe the Senate has pulled that out because the more appropriate place is the operating budget. So I believe that you're going to see an amendment from Representative Willis to address that, to put that into this budget. With that, the other components that we're looking for that are outlined at the bottom of my testimony, we need funds to replace underground storage tanks around the state in our airports. About half the airports in the state have these underground storage tanks that are toward their useful life of 30 years and need remediated. So there's a $4 million request in the Ohio Department of Commerce Bureau of Underground Storage Tanks. Other opportunities to help these airports, the commercial airports have no stream of funding whatsoever going into them today from the state. But enhancing security, baggage claim, and customer experiences at these airports, we've requested $10 million to go to the Department of Commerce to do so. And to fund building hangars for general aviation airports, help them with revenue, and to address the demand right now that every one of them have across the state. So the Ohio Aviation Association urges your support for House Bill 96 with these amendments. If Ohio does not provide additional funds for Ohio's 100 public-owned, public-use airports to access up to 95% of those funds at the federal level, those funds for infrastructure projects are going to go to airports in other states. It's as simple as that, and we don't want that to happen. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop my comments with 3 seconds left and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fiore. Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. How much total money are you requesting?
Through the chair to Representative Schmidt, we are requesting the $10 million that you've got allocated in the general operating budget. The language, we hope, is going to pull in another estimated $10 million from those aviation fuel tax. So the users right now are fully funding the investment going into airports. With these other amendments that I mentioned at the end of my testimony, I believe Representative Santucci are drafting those right now. Those are other enhancements that we've just never had access to. And I failed to mention, if you look on the front page, a state like Georgia, who they have about 105 public-owned airports, they're putting in $80 million to their airports. We're asking for a bump in the amount of funds that can be accessed by our 104 public-owned, public-use airports, but it pales in comparison to what other states are putting in. And the more that they're putting in, the more they're able to access those funds at the federal level, which is a great investment. 5% to get 95% for these infrastructure projects and all the jobs that come about that we think are good investments for the state to make.
Thank you. From my past experience and my past life, I knew there was a nice drawdown. Would the money come out of the ODOT budget, or where would this money come from?
So through the chair to Representative Schmidt, because we've had to ask for these through the operating budget and we don't know how much that aviation fuel tax will pull in, we're hoping it pulls in around 10 million. So the other 10 million will have to come from general revenue funds from other places. And so the request is to figure out how to continue to invest more in addition to what the users are putting in, which is about the 10 million that's been allocated annually to these airports to pull down. It's to ask the state to invest more through general revenue funds.
Thank you.
Representative Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Fiore, and for your efforts. I certainly enjoyed working with you when we did the transportation budget, and I'm sad to hear that when we had tried to move in the right direction of treating aviation-generated motor fuel taxes to be considered a real user fee and put it back in the aviation industry. I guess they'll have to fight that out in conference committee. But the point you make, and having two of 100 of your 104 members in my district, is I don't think a lot of people realize how beneficial the FAA funding is. As you said, you can get up to 95%, but you got to be able to come up with the 5%. To your knowledge, with all of the changes taking place over in Washington, minute by minute as we speak, is that still a fairly protected thing that match, or that coming the state or the local airport coming up with the match? Those dollars are still going to be there to fund these airport improvements at a 95% rate.
Through the chair to Representative Troy, We don't know, quite frankly, if that's going to continue to be available. We do know that there was bill match money that for the last few years has been left on the table that the Office of Aviation has not been able to match for our airports, but it's clearly allocated to our airports in the state. So there was another request to bump up from the 10 to 15 million in the Office of Aviation, specifically because over a 5-year period, we knew that we could access